Hey, welcome to the Black Ibis Social Club. We got Fisto and Lisa today. What's up, Fisto? Hey, welcome to the Black
Ibis. Oh, hello, everyone. How we doing?
Hey, what's up? And we also got Lisa tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Pretty good. Still trying to figure out how to use StreamYard, so it's going to be a little bit of an experimental kind of thing. I did my little intro video, which I thought was pretty cool. You know,
mm-hmm. I think it'll go great.
Yeah,
flawless. It shall be. It shall be flawless. It is flawless.
So today, hey, what's up, Lauren? I see you in the chat. Fred, hopefully we get a few people today. It should be exciting. This is our experiment, okay? This is our live streaming radio experiment. So I'm actually
welcome, friends.
I'm very excited to do this. So today for our first live stream, I decided to talk about my favorite movie. All right, The Great Beauty. Paolo Sorrentino's The Great Beauty from 2013, winner of the Best Foreign Film Academy Award. So it's not like a unknown movie, but it's one that when I bring it up to people, unless they're like film geek types, they're never really heard about it. But in my opinion, and I feel free to disagree with me, it's one of the most beautiful movies, and it's probably my favorite movie of all time, and definitely one of the best movies of the 21st century. And that's kind of a tough one because we did have No Country for Old Men this early 21st century. But The Great Beauty is my favorite movie because it touches all the things that appeal to me, which is, tortured writer, Europe, beautiful things, tradition, this dichotomy between modernity and classical beauty and tradition. And I think that it is a movie that really captures the spirit of some of the things I wrestle with in my aesthetic life and my personal life. And even though I'm not a 65-year-old man like Jeb Gambarella, Gambarella, what's his name? Gambardella, sorry. It's definitely one I feel very much like him. So without going into very quick details of the movie, Lisa and Fisto, what did you guys think of the movie?
Do you want to go first, Fisto, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Ladies first.
All right. Okay, so I really did like it. There were some parts that were really, really funny. But overall, I felt it was a very sad movie. But like, not in like a depressing sad, but like, how do you describe that? Melancholy.
Yeah,
I guess like you can tell that he is reflecting a lot on his life. He's 65. He's doing a lot of reflection. He's looking at the people around him and thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But I don't know if he has too many regrets. It's more just he has to, by the end of the movie, he has to figure out like what's important.
Right.
But I did find it to be a sad movie, although there were some really, really funny parts too.
Oh yeah.
If you've ever been in the art world, especially if you've ever associated with wealthy socialite art world people, it's fucking funny. Pardon me. Are we allowed to swear on this live stream? Are we allowed to curse?
I'm sure. Okay. I mean, YouTube can ban us or whatever. I don't care.
I'm like Ricky in Trailer Park Boys. I can't speak without swearing. So
yeah, Fisto, talk closer into your mic. You're a little bit fadey.
Is that better?
Much better. Yeah.
Much better. Okay.
Yeah. What did you think about it, Fisto?
So the first thing that occurred to me was, Alexander's the main character. Fantastic. When he's sitting there in the club, and he's just kind of vibing and like it's going to all the different people, and then it points on him, I was like, that's the only man in charge right there. That's the only one that knows what he's doing. But no, jokes aside, very melancholic. It has been weighing heavily on my mind ever since I watched it. I almost had to go to bed right away because it didn't make me tired, but it was exhausting when it was done. It was like, wow, okay, I have to remove myself from consciousness in order to fully appreciate what this movie was. Not like Jep going to bed, first thing in the morning. Is that how you say his first name, by the way?
Jep,
Because
I
it's
think.
spelled J-E-P, but is it
Jeb,
pronounced Jeb?
yeah.
Jeb, okay, like Jeb Stewart. Okay, great. Well, anyway, as a side note, me screwing up the first name already, it kind of makes me wonder how many things I missed because I can't speak Italian. But I'll just have to hope that it came through anyway. But yeah, it was very melancholic. It was very sad. But at the end, it was hopeful in the way that a fallen world must be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Especially the final couple of scenes. It was like, holy shit! Like, this is fantastic. This is great.
One thing I will say about the translation. I don't want to get ahead of
myself. Yeah.
I noticed that there was a couple lines, and I don't speak Italian, but there was a couple lines where they translated into more of like a like British English rather than North American English. I did catch that, so I don't know. Again, the curse of the monolingual. I don't know how good of a translation it was that I watched, but I think they did all right. There was probably a few jokes that went over our heads because it would have only been funny in Italian, but
right. Hey, what's up, Jude? What's up, Judy? Yeah, so I think you're right, Lisa and Fisto. Melancholy is the right word for it. So I've seen this movie like 10 times already. Like I own it. It made me cry like 4 times. It always does. There's certain scenes that like really get me, in the movie. And I figured for the stream tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to I'm going to go down through my notes and we'll stop and we'll comment on certain elements and stuff. So, for example, movie was from 2013. It is an Italian movie. It's made by multiple studios. Like most European movies, if you ever are into Euro movies, they tend to be multinational kind of productions. It's done by Paolo Sorrentino, who just recently has a new movie that came out called something like Persephone, or which it looks interesting. I want to watch it, but I like the intro I like the logo for the Janus films because it's very ancient with the two-headed god looking at each other, and so those whenever I see that logo, I'm like, I'm about to see a movie that's it's going to be artsy, and I'm going to feel it, right?
For sure.
And it's going to be worth your time.
One thing that's hugely different about European cinema, Canadian cinema, and American cinema, Canadian movies and European movies are funded a lot through taxes, whereas Americans have their own movie industry that is the global. They don't need tax funding, right? Unless you're doing something for PBS, right? But Canadian film industry is funded by taxes. Like every Cronenberg movie, especially when it was started out, was funded by the Canadian taxpayer. I am A-okay with that, by the way. And then when you're watching the credits in this one, there's a huge list of like grants and stuff that they got for funding too, and that allows international cinema to have a much different flavor than American cinema because they're less concerned with, is this going to churn? I mean, they are concerned with it, but they're less concerned with, is this a trendy movie? Is this going to, be a blockbuster hit? Whereas American movies are much more concerned about, will this return my dollar? It's all privately funded. And those private investors in American films are looking to make their money back. Right. So that's one of the big differences between a movie like this one. That movie could never be made by an American studio.
Oh, absolutely not.
Unless it was an independent film and they were funding it out of their own pockets or something.
Right.
It's definitely a European movie for sure.
Right. So after the Janus and all the different productions, we get the quote, right? We get a quote from Celine. All right. For you guys, if you're not familiar with Celine, Celine might be the greatest writer of the 20th century, right? It's Ferdinand Celine, the French writer. The quote is from his best novel, his most well-known novel called Journey to the End of the Night, which also happens to be the bleakest and the darkest novel I have ever I've ever read. So if you want to go into the depths of despair, Journey to the End of the Night by Celine, who was also a hardcore Nazi collaborator. And,
we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Listen, it's the 20th century, all right? Everybody was a little bit Nazi, all right? Nazi schmatzi, says Werner von Braun. That's
so interestingly enough, he was such a Nazi that the Nazi, he was French and he was a Parisian, and during the occupation, he actually met our boy Ernst Jünger, right? And Ernst Jünger was like, "Hey, bro, tone down the Nazi stuff." Ooh, we getting some static there.
Yeah.
That's you, Lisa.
Was it me?
Yeah.
Am I staticky?
Yeah, you're staticky.
Shoot. I don't know why I haven't touched it.
Unplug real fast.
The ghost of Ernst Jung has joined us.
There you go.
On this fine day.
Ernst Jünger was like, this Celine guy is a hardcore anti-Semite, and he makes basically the Nazis uncomfortable. So that's how hardcore he was. But he was a great writer, and you can't deny that. So there it is. Interestingly enough, the Barnes and Noble by my house has Celine Journey to the End of the Night for sale. So he's not like he's like banned. Oh man, I'm gonna ban Lisa soon.
Is it staticky again?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
No,
okay, I'm gonna mute.
It's gone.
Is it gone?
Yeah, it's gone. I don't know what that is.
It kind of sounded like maybe it kind of sounded like you were sitting on an airplane and you turned on the fan up above.
Weird.
It was just blowing way too hard.
I've just been muting and unmuting my mic to see if it goes away, but
no, it went away. All right, so the movie opens with a very interesting scene, right? The movie opens with a kind of it opens with a cannon and then a panoramic view of Rome and the famous fountain, and there is a choir singing, like a religious kind of a choir singing of these women dressed in all black, and there's kind of a montage of a guy washing his face in the fountain, a guy sleeping on a bench, people walking, smoking cigarettes. And it goes into a scene where there's a Japanese tour group and an Italian tour guide, and she's speaking in Japanese. And we see a elderly Japanese man kind of do the elderly Japanese man thing and start walking away, and he's taking pictures of Rome on his Nokia camera. I don't know. I'm just saying it's and he has a heart attack and he dies. And it's one of the, I think that scene sets the tone for the whole movie, because it ultimately tells us that in this beautiful landscape, this great beauty around us, there's life and death, and we are just kind of going through, we're just kind of passing through. And it's a very interesting scene, right? Like and I was like, why are they Japanese? Why are they Japanese? What's he trying to say? And I was watching it today and I was thinking, oh, he's saying that we are tourists, right? We're only visitors here, right? To quote Hotel California, right? And in a way, like I'm like, okay, so that sets the whole tone, and then bam, the opening switches to the scream, just this insane scream, and it's that amazing party scene, and it's one of the coolest party scenes in movies. It's got the techno music, the Euro techno music, like bouncing, and you've got all these attractive people, obviously rich people, dancing and doing all this stuff. There's Anthony Bourdain is there. If you if you pay quick attention, you see Anthony Bourdain. He has a cameo in there, which is very much he's the permanent tourist, the permanent deracinated individual that doesn't belong anywhere. And there's all this performances going on, and that's something you have to pay attention to, right? You have the burlesque girl, she's inside that glass kind of thing, and she's performing, and every person is just performing. It's almost like a performative party. And it kind of introduces the characters. You have that guy, that the toy maker. He's just a little pervert. He's he's telling that girl, it's like, oh, I want to fuck you, you know, right?
Just over and over again, yeah. And she's ignoring him.
She's ignoring him, and then you've got my favorite character, the girl with the big Roman nose. Like, they're like, how could you find a bust of a woman like that? And oh my God.
I like the playwright guy. I thought he was funny.
Oh, Romano, right?
Yeah,
you got Romano, and you kind of have all their kind of elements, coming into right away, right? And then you have this then one of the best character intro scenes of all time, just Jep, and he just turns, and he is just a baller of all ballers imaginable, right? He's got a cigarette in his mouth between his teeth, and all the women are like all over him, and he's just like, yeah, whatever, he's cool, and you're like, okay, this is his birthday, this is his movie, this is like him, and he's got the riz, like the young children say today. The guy's got the mad riz, and then all of a sudden you have a stop. Right away, we're breaking the fourth wall. It's like a technique that you're like, okay, where's this movie taking us? Everything slows down, and you see Jep, and he is not happy. There's a longing there, this feeling of like, fuck am I doing? I've been doing this for 65 years. It's just instant like pause. So. What'd you guys think of the intro?
That was so the introduction stood out to me because there was a huge juxtaposition between the scene with the Japanese tourist and all the classical singing and the beautiful ancient Roman architecture and blah, 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 to this scream. And we see this modern party thing, and it's the first instance of many, many, many juxtaposition scenes like that throughout the entire movie, kind of like back and forth between the beautiful traditional Roman thing and these moments of silence, like the scenes where all this, I don't know about all, I'd have to watch the movie again, all the scenes where it's showing the classical architecture is quiet, it's understated, the music, it's classical music, but it's not loud. The violins are very subtle, actually. And I had to watch it on my laptop. And even with the volume up loud, it was almost hard to hear the musical score during these parts. And then the modern scenes where it's modern architecture, modern clothing, modern art, okay, it was very loud and obnoxious. And there's a ton of breaks like that throughout the entire movie. It keeps flip-flopping between those. And I think it's a really brilliant way to, because you can't, the movie is very novel-like, but you can't show the interiority of a character in a movie. That's the failure of film, and that's the strength of a novel. So these tricks that the director is doing, and I want to go into the lighting in this movie too eventually. The tricks that this director is doing is showing us the interiority of the character through these juxtapositional scenes.
Right. Like the light. Fisto?
Yeah, I think the beginning of the movie, that Japanese dude, it's setting up the sacred and the profane. And the movie goes back and forth between sacred things and profane things. And I think Jep is very much, for the first time in his life, able or becoming able to step to the other side, to reach across or reach up, as it were, in a way that he's never been able to do before. And of course, death is the thing that allows it. His I don't know if you want to get to the big thing that, sends him on his journey yet, but he's 65 years old. He's at this party. He's doing his thing. He is essentially, he's got nothing else left to do as far as like the profane, the everyday level goes, right? The guy is the king. That's why I was making that joke. Like when cuts to him in the club and everything. It's just, oh, that's the main character. And
right.
it does this magic of, this is the only guy who's not putting on a show. This is the only guy, he is in charge of himself. And everybody else there is doing this or doing that or doing this or doing that. And this guy's just, yay, what the fuck? You know, it's hilarious. I love it. And it's showing that there is nothing left for him to do. He is at the top. He's the king of the high life, like he said. I wanted to become the king of the high life.
He's the king of the Rome party scene, and you know the commentary.
Yeah,
there's dialogue interspersed throughout this scene, and it's a lot of it is really hilarious. There's that scene
it's
where
very funny.
Viola's like, who's that? Who's that gross looking woman? When the big fat girl comes out of, and
yes,
the other girl's like, oh, she's like some like washed out movie star or something like that, and she goes, oh, well, I don't have television. And then the other woman's like, oh yeah, we know, Viola, you tell us every single time that you don't have television, you know, like it's like you snood, you know. And it's just this or the scene between Romano and his girlfriend and that actor, and he's like, oh, I have a show where I'm going to be playing basically the Pope, and then another show where I'm playing a recovering drug addict. And,
right. And that dude he just runs over Romano and scores.
Just runs over him.
There are a lot.
Like, man, that guy couldn't get late. You know, like, oh my God, it was so funny. Yeah. He just,
the thing that makes the movie the most funny is just how insufferable most of the characters are in the movie.
Right.
It's just so fucking stupid.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And these people
like,
exist. They're realistically obnoxious. That's why it works, because these people exist. Like I've met people just like the people in this movie before.
Yeah, unfortunately, me too.
Yeah. So they're all very real, whether we like it or not.
And they all post on the internet.
Well, hey, one thing I wanted to point out too.
They post stoic daily affirmations.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Daily affirmations. That's great. Hey, I wanted to point something out real quick before we move on from this scene. One thing that stood out to me too was how it was almost like they were setting up all the different feminine archetypes too. Like, as they went through the party, you would linger on a particular type of girl, and they all looked like that type. Oh, that girl. Oh, I know that girl. That girl. And I think what it was leading up to was the fact that Jepp has had all of those. You know, like he's been there, done that, bought the T-shirt. Like, don't even worry about it. Like, he's just, and it's just he's like he says later in the film, he no longer has time to do things he doesn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we move on from the initial party. Now we know that Jepp is, we know this is Jepp's movie. We know that he is the king of the high life. We know he's turning 65. And he wakes up the next morning, and we get introduced to like the most grounded character out of all the characters in the movie, and that's his maid, his Spanish maid, right? He's got a Spanish maid, and he calls her.
So great.
Yeah, she calls her his little rascal, and
I made a note of that because I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, she's making him orange juice, and she's like basically like chiding him for drinking too much, and he's all like, "Oh, only drunk enough to forget my birthday" or something like that. And he goes, so Jepp is a flaneur. If you guys never heard the term flaneur is a individual who likes to walk. Right, he walks through cities. All right, so it's a very 19th century kind of concept where gentlemen would walk around the city and just look at stuff, and that's what Jepp is. He's a flaneur. So he's walking in the morning it was probably afternoon because he woke up in the afternoon, and he's walking through town, and he does something that you see kind of you see two repetitive motifs in here, right? Basically, there's a part where he washes his face on a fountain, right? Like at a little like a water fountain thing. And you see that kind of repeated a bunch of times in the movie where somebody's washing their face in an ancient fountain. And this one's ancient because if you look carefully, it says SPQR on it. So it's a Roman era fountain. And then oranges and nuns. You see the oranges and the nuns, popping up all the time. And he's just, he's walking around and kind of like, being kind of oranges, nuns, and children, and fountains. And he just, he's got this like wistfulness and kind of sadness to him while he does this. And that's when he runs into the neighbor, and the neighbor is that really weird guy that ignores him. He's all like, hey, I want to talk to you. And I want to get back to that guy later because there's like a reveal, but he's kind of wistful and kind of bored. There's kind of this vibe to him. And then we cut into the scene, which is the first kind of real funny scene, which is he's doing it. You find out that Jep is he's a writer for a magazine, like an art and culture magazine in Rome. And he's out there to interview this artist named Talia the artist, right? Oh, Talia the creator.
Yeah.
Real quick. The strange guy where he's asking him about, hey, what, where do you get your suits from? The guy you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
It strikes me that I think part of what irritates Jep so much about him is that he's behind a locked door that Jep has not gotten access to.
Right.
It's this, he can't quite get, even Jep can't get everywhere. And yes, we definitely need to return back to that guy because funniest moment in the movie, by far and away the funniest, I think.
Right, and actually a very interesting moment that has a lot of implications. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And yes, but anyway, so yes, the artist. Yes, can we talk about the stupid Soviet woman?
Yeah, Talia the creator, right?
Good Lord.
So she's in this beautiful scene, it's framed like this beautiful scene, and there's the ruins of an aqueduct, and his naked broad comes on
with the fucking hammer and sickle on her pubic hair. Fucking so funny.
She's got shaved into the pubic hair. Amazing.
And then she takes off running down a runway. It's like a road, right, and headbutts the aqueduct, and stumbles out covered in blood, and it's like this ridiculous scene, and everybody's clapping, and they're like, "Oh, what a great fucking performance!" And they're like, "Bravo, bravissimo!" And it's just this, and you see Jeb's face; he's just like, "Fuck this." Like,
I wrote down. I had to pause the movie there, and I had to write down the actual dialogue. Did you like the performance? And then Jeb says parts of it, and then so she refers to herself in the third person. He says right to her face, speaking in the third person is unbearable. I thought it was so fucking funny because he doesn't give a shit what she thinks of him.
She's like, my vibrations.
My vibrations.
And he's like,
what's a vibration? Right.
What's it?
Well, what is that?
You have to use words. Yeah.
Oh, it's my radar.
Use your words. Use your words.
Yeah. What is your radar? And she gets mad, and he calls him. He basically calls out her bullshit. He's like, listen, lady, I'm not interested in your nonsense. And and this scene leads into the first really heartwarming scene with his publisher, right? His editor, Dandina. And she's a dwarf, right? She's a midget, or whatever the proper nomenclature into 2025 is nowadays. A little person, a person of diminished stature, right?
Yeah, halfling.
And
she's a halfling. Right?
Yeah, she's one of the best characters too. And they have this conversation about rice, right? The food that she's making him food. She's like, oh, it's reheated rice, and he's like, oh, it's great. And then she says, that's because it's reheated, and the old is better than the new. Mm-hmm. Right. And this is your traditionalist element in the movie. She goes, the old is better than the new. And she tells him this kind of weird anecdote. It's not weird. What are the two best things? Soup and rice, and soup and sex are the two best things in the world. And he goes, oh, isn't that a contradiction? And she goes, no, because both are hot. Right. And it's kind of like a little cutesy thing, and she kind of eggs him on because you find out that Jep was a writer. I mean, he's obviously still a writer, but he's like he's a journalist kind of writer now. But he was a writer, as in he wrote a novel, and he wrote a novel that was pretty well received 30 years ago. But he hasn't written shit since, right? He's been basically just being Jep ever since he wrote this novel, which is I feel it, right? And she basically tells him how he needs to get out there and do more, write more, do this kind of stuff. And then we shoot back to the first of the intimate parties, right? and these are parties on his like patio, and oh my god, I would give a left nut to have the dude's apartment. Okay, he's got this view of the Coliseum. He's got
it's almost like you almost watch in disbelief, like, do apartments like this actually exist? Yes, they do, and they are very, very expensive.
Right. I mean, how much would that cost? I mean, can you guys like, share, and subscribe so I can get I would probably need 1 billion subscribers to afford something.
Yeah, we're going to need our studio over the Coliseum to record future episodes.
Great.
That's the key. Hey, so I'm glad. Real quick, I want to interject. I think it occurs to me that his view of the Coliseum, the scene with the Roman aqueduct. We could talk about this later because I don't know if I'm right yet. But Rome itself is a character in the film, which is something I really
yes, it is. Yeah, and that's what I liked about the credits, actually.
Oh,
and you don't normally say I liked the credits, but that's
yeah. The lady running into the aqueduct. I mean, the aqueduct didn't give a shit. It's going to be there for another 2,000 years, and that lady's going to be gone, and her cute little hair job's going to be gone, and it's just, what are you people again?
I mean, that was literally
get here. Yeah.
Basically saying that Rome and tradition and great beauty is going to survive the stupidity of naked women with hammer and sickles tattooed on their twats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? It's just it's not going to last.
Yeah.
They'll resist the dumbhead.
There's also several of the characters in the film regard Rome incorrectly. Like, it's not Rome itself that has disappointed them in one way or another. It's the people that they're associating with, because Rome itself, they were looking in the wrong places for whatever their version of the Great Beauty is. They were looking in the wrong places, especially the main character.
Right.
So Rome is a character for sure, and it's a misunderstood character.
Right. So
totally agree.
So they're now at the second party, and the first of the balcony parties, but not the best one. And now you get a better understanding of basically the cast of characters, and you get Viola. She's the rich woman, and she's the one whose husband died, but she owns a yacht that once belonged to Heinrich Himmler. And,
they're talking about Himmler's yacht.
And and then you got Stefania, and Stefania is the 52-year-old kind of a television star woman, and she's very snooty, and she calls Jep a misogynist at one point, and he goes, I
wrote down that line. I wrote that line down.
I'm a misanthropist.
Yeah, I'm not a misogynist, I'm a misanthropist. Yeah, I wrote that one down. That was really good. And I'm like, oh, this is why he loves this movie.
That's such a good line. And then you got Romano and his creepy girlfriend, his total bitch of a girlfriend, or not even girlfriend, though, like some woman that he's obsessed with, like a total psychopath. And then you've got the publisher. She's there with her creepy silent poet who doesn't talk. And she's like, why doesn't he talk? He just listens. And they're like laughing about this dude, and it's like this entire back and forth. And there's a kind of a newbie in the crowd, and she's the one from Milan. She's the blonde girl, and after this party, he's walking down the street with her, and she's like, he's like, what do you do for work? And she's like, I'm rich. And he's like, that's a good job. Right? Yeah. So they go to her apartment, and it's apartment in this movie's terms is like this museum basically that she lives in.
Yeah, it's an art gallery.
Yeah, it's an art gallery because she's obviously like disgustingly rich, And Jep, at this point, he's starting to show like he's breaking. He's just like, I am not into this kind of thing. And they just had sex. They're both on the bed, and she's all like, was that any good? And he's like, oh, not really. He kind of is like not really into it. He's like, it's no big deal. Who cares, right? And she starts going, oh, I take a lot of pictures of myself. It's like a really sad kind of pathetic scene when you really think about it. And she goes, oh, I'm going to go. Do you want to see him? And he's like, sure. And he's like, I'm going to get my laptop. So she gets up and gets his laptop. And he gets up. He's on the balcony. And this is where he says a scene, you know, like he says a quote. And let me get you the exact quote. Let me find the quote. He says, he goes, the most important thing I discovered a few days after turning 65 is that I can't waste any more time doing things I don't want to. And he just leaves. He just bounces, you know. And then you see her coming out, and you know he's just like she's by herself and he's gone.
Yeah.
He bounced, you know. And I love that line, you know, like I just can't waste any more time doing things I don't want to. And the question is, has he been always doing things for the last like 30 years? Like does he not want to go out? Does he not want to party? Is he just stuck in this like permanent king of Rome kind of like lifestyle, like that most people on, at least on paper, like, you know, even me looking at the movie, God, I'm like, I would love to have his life, right? I would love to live in an apartment overlooking, you know, the Coliseum. Like you can see on the screen, that's from his patio, and you can see the Coliseum in the corner over there. Like he's rich, beautiful women throw themselves at him. So like, what is he wasting his time on? You know, like, is it just like he's just unfulfilled? Is he unhappy? And you know, the next scene answers the question right away. All right, because you guys remember what the next scene is?
Remind me.
So the next scene is he goes back home and there's this guy waiting for him. Right.
Yes, this is the inciting incident.
The moment.
Yes. It's the inciting incident of the whole movie, right? And so he gets home. There's this guy waiting for him, and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gambonella. Can I talk to you?" And he's like, "I don't know you. I don't know who you are." And he's like, "Do you know? I'm Eliza's husband." And he's like, "What?" And the first thing, this is really telling, right? The first thing Jeb says to him is, "Did you have any children?" All right. That's the first thing he says to him. And he goes, "No, I can't. I couldn't." And he goes, "Well, I could." All right. So and then the guy goes around and tells him Eliza's dead. She recently passed away. And Jeb's like, "Ugh," and he starts like kind of tearing up, and this guy starts tearing up. But if you guys caught it, he dropped the "Did you have any children?" and "I could."
Yeah.
Before he knew that she was dead. So now you know that like he was
trying to put up a front, and then it completely shatters after the guy mentions about it. Yeah.
Right. So they go outside, it's pouring rain, and they go back to the guy's house. And the guy tells him that the reason he went to him was because he's been married to Eliza for 35 years. But he broke into her after she passed away. He opened her private diary. He like broke the lock on her diary, and in her diary, she doesn't mention him more than once, and mentions him as like he was a good companion, but she always loved Jeb. Right? That's like what she always cares about, and that must hurt, man. That must hurt, right? When you think about that, can you imagine, Fisto? Like, you know, you spend 30 years with your wife and you break into her diary and she's like, "Oh, you know, I only love this one dude that was like from my teenage years, and you were a good companion," right? So it's rough, right? Like,
I think one thing that I didn't realize until the conversation, I want to bring it up. The prior scene with the hookup, he leaves after she begins to talk about his book. And she identifies that you must have been deeply in love when you read this book.
Yeah.
And
the
reason he leaves, the reason he leaves is he doesn't want to deal with that. He doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to do things. It's not her he doesn't want to do. It's come to grips with the fact that that book is about his one true love, and that's the only thing he's ever been able to create that was good. And then literally in the very next scene, fate cold clocks him. Not a sucker punch. He gets cold clocked. Like, sorry, motherfucker, you're gonna do stuff you don't want to do. And like he may as well have been the woman that ran into the aqueduct. at that moment.
Right.
The aqueduct reaches out and hits him.
Right.
In that moment.
Because, you could see it in his face. I mean, the acting is great.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes from being
magnificent.
arrogant to just what? Like it just opens up like
Shattered.
all
He's
sorts
shattered.
of memories. He's shattered by it.
Yeah, he's done. He's done.
Right. And he's walking down the, basically doing his flaneur thing again. And he ends up, there's a scene right almost right after this where he is in this chapel, and there's this woman that's like, where's my daughter? Where's Francesca? Francesca's missing, and this is really a really weird scene, right? One of the more mystical scenes in the movie. And this girl is hiding in this like ancient, like,
Sewer.
Renaissance chapel, right? And she's under this grate type thing, and she's looking up at him, and Jep comes up walking, and she's like, and he sees her there, and he looks down, and he's like, who are you? And she's like, you're nobody.
Yeah.
And then it just like breaks him. He doesn't even reply. He just bounces out. He's like, I'm out.
Yeah, that scene is one of the scenes that struck me as being very like I said before, the movie is very novel-like. Like, one thing that I noticed is that there's no real delineation from one scene to the next. We don't know if it's the next day. We don't know if it's like a week later. It's very almost like the way memory works. There's no distinct thing between his dreams versus what's actually happening in his life. It's very, you have to be like, I could see somebody watching this movie and not getting it. Like they just would not understand like what's going on. And that's one of those scenes where if you're not really paying attention, you might wonder if he's dreaming, but he's not. It's just a weird part of the film, and it really perfectly encapsulates that, like, a very novel-ish way that this movie is filmed.
Right. It just flows from, one. It's very fluid.
It's extremely fluid, and there's nothing in the movie is very clearly, nothing in the movie has defined edges. It all just kind of like, it's the way that like memory works or dreams work, where there's like, when you're dreaming or when you're trying to remember something, it's like, when you're remembering something from your childhood, you're not remembering a specific day, unless it's like a really, really major event in your life. But it's just like, oh, I remember summer from when I was 6 years old. And you remember the freezies and the ice cream truck, but you're not remembering like a specific, I got up in the morning and then I went to bed. It's more like a big congealed mass in your head, right?
Right.
So I found that the movie was structured a lot like that, and the fact that he is a writer, and the fact that he's stuck on when he's going to write his next novel and everything, he's looking for that. And then the movie itself, the director does a really great job of structuring the movie the way that he may be turning this into his novel.
Right.
The way that it's structured.
Right.
The way that Jep is turning it into a novel as we're watching it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, because the idea, the power of the written word, or the novel, is that you play with time. Time is fluid. You can go in and out of timelines, and you can do it very seamlessly, where film can't do it. I mean, it can do it, as we can see in this movie, for example, but it can't do it as well.
Yeah.
And, because he gets shattered by this little girl, basically. It's kind of like, I think she puts like, whether it's a real scene that really happened or it's more of a hypothetical scene. In the next scene, you think that, okay, now Jep's going to become like, this is in an American movie or another movie, he would be like, he'd have like a moment of clarity, and he would like start doing good things. But no, he kind of becomes
he doesn't
after this movie, after this scene, right?
Yeah.
He's sitting at Romano's like dorm room, and he is kind of being a jerk. He's sitting there like doing, like, he's like playing with his hat, and Romano's trying to be serious, and he's like, what are you doing? And Romano, and he goes, oh, I'm exercising. I'm doing my exercises. And he's kind of like picking on Romano for for like, not sleeping with enough women or something like that. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, what about that morose girl you're always bringing around? And he's like, oh, I really like her. And he's like, well, she's a bitch. She's a
Yeah.
real bitch. I know her. She's a real bitch. And he keeps on like, insulting Romano.
Mhm.
And they're having this kind of conversation. And then that scene ends with like a really, really interesting scene where all of a sudden Romano like hushes and goes, shh, shh, shh. And he points to the other side of through the open door. Romano lives in some kind of a shared apartment building type thing, and in the other side of the hallway, there's a young couple that are making out.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, they've been doing that for like 10 hours
nonstop. Yeah.
10 days. Yeah. 10 days.
One,
he says.
Yeah.
10 days. Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out about that particular scene, I actually wrote this part down. Throughout the entire movie, the lighting is extremely deliberate. My favorite shot in the whole movie, he's sitting on the edge of the bed and he's exhaling the cigarette smoke, and he leans forward into this extremely bright shaft of light, and the way that the smoke totally envelops him in the light, it's such a gorgeous freaking shot. And I'd have to watch the movie again because I don't really remember if they were speaking during that particular shot or if that was the silent shot, but I do remember the lighting and the smoke around Jep was like, it was beautiful. I think that was my favorite shot in the whole movie.
Right. But,
sorry, I have a thought I need to get out, and I'm going to present a theory here as we go through the film. But I think women in the film are a mirror for Jep.
Yeah.
They show him himself, or they show him what reality or God is trying to show him. And it strikes me that, so he has the scene with the hookup and he runs away from that because it's getting too close to the thing he doesn't want to face. And then she literally is dead. So like, you have to deal with it now. Then the young girl is this moment of like, you can't run from this, buddy. You're not getting away from this. And then he goes to Romano's because what's the likelihood of a woman being at Romano's? None. That's why he's there. Because if he can hide, if there's anywhere in the world he can hide from women, it's Romano's. And even there, it gets shoved in his face with two young lovers who haven't stopped making out for 10 days.
Right. Well, it goes hand in hand with all the other juxtapositional themes in this movie, the male and the female. And I thought that was it was really, really strong, especially right off the bat. You could really tell that there was a sense of masculine and feminine throughout this entire movie. And there's a lot of mirror to his personality, I guess, but in a very Italian way. Italian, the Italian male, what do they call that? I don't want to toxic masculinity, right? I'm using big old air quotes here, but that Italianness in How to Be a Man versus that Italianness in How to Be a Woman. There's a lot of almost throwaway lines in that movie about like the male thing versus the female. In this Italian societal thing.
I like too how everybody's so well dressed, and like going back to the beginning of the film when you see that fat dude wash his face in the fountain, and you're like, that guy runs a business and he's about to go kick somebody's ass. Like even that dude is like, he's in charge. He's a man. Like,
well, there's also the line in the movie where there's a line in the movie where the guy says Italians are known for what was it, suits and pizza. We're a nation of something in grocers. I don't remember exactly what the line was, and I thought that was really, really funny because it's true. There are
every grocers.
Yeah, Taylor's and grocers. And every now this is a movie about socialites, so everybody's extremely well dressed, but Italian suits are so fucking iconic. Like this movie would look entirely different if it were shot in France or the UK. Like English suits French suits, Italian suits. They're all like you could watch this movie on mute and you would fucking know it was filmed in Italy just based on the suits alone. Like the costume department did a really, really nice job.
Right. Well, Jeb has some drip with the white pants.
Oh,
and
yeah,
yellow
for
blazer,
sure. Yeah.
And,
like his clothes are like what you would like if you were reading like a GQ magazine that's all about like Italian suits. You would see a picture of Jep in that. Look, dressed like this guy. Here's how to do it, and he's the guy that would be standing there with like the list of things, like this is his tie, this is his suit, this is his pants, this is his shoes, this is his watch, this is his cufflinks, this is his pocket square, like all that shit, right?
And it costs more than I make in a year.
Yeah, too bad. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, and after all that, you're still not going to pull it off. You're going to have that.
No, because you aren't Jeb, right?
Yeah, because you aren't this guy. Exactly.
But people want to, like, that's the whole reason why brands throw clothes at celebrities, because they want people to want to look like the celebrity that's wearing it, right? But certain people can just pull it off. Like Jep has the personality where, like, even if he was wearing Walmart clothes, he would still have a presence because of the way he walks and the way he talks, right? But because he's also dressed to the nines, like, all the time, that's his character.
He's contrasted when he's on one of his little walking trips by the river, and there's three guys like jogging, and they're about his age, and they're obviously like businessmen, and they're kind of jogging, and they're kind of dressed in like athletic gear, and they're sweating, and they're talking about business, and then Jeb's just kind of strolling along, just finished partying. He doesn't care about finances or any of this stuff. He's just just an aristocrat, basically.
That's another difference too between Europeans and North Americans. You don't really okay, if you go downtown, like for those who aren't familiar with me, I'm Canadian, so my reference is Toronto. When I visit Toronto, like, there are certain streets like Bay Street, downtown Toronto, whatever, where you can see these guys in their Bay Street. Toronto is kind of like Wall Street in New York kind of idea. So, like, you see a lot of guys in their nice businessy suits and stuff, but it is not the same as the attitude towards dress is in Europe. Like, that's another thing that, like, in North America, we just don't, you can't, if you saw a wealthy guy, most wealthy people in North America just don't know how to fucking dress. Like, they look like a normal person walking down the road in North America. Like, you can't tell, but you can tell that when Jep is walking down the street, he has money and he knows how to spend his money. Right.
And that the thing here is, and the movie, I think, even does a good point of it, is that these guys, him and his crowd, are like the decrepit, dying breed of like social aristocrats that is going to be replaced, and their empty lives are coming to an end, and they're unhappy, but they're being replaced by vulgarity, because like, I would rather have these guys. North American vulgar, like Elon Musk's and Jeff Bezos, who ironically, to stick with the Italian theme, just had his wedding in Venice, and there's something ugly and vulgar about him. I mean, I don't even know if Jep Gambonella would go to Jeff Bezos's party.
Oh, fucking no way. There's a line in the movie too where I don't remember which character says it. She's talking about some young relative of theirs and how, they're so smart, so they have to leave. Like, they have to go to the US because they think they're so smart and whatever. So there's a couple throwaway lines, or I shouldn't say throwaway lines because they are important if you're paying attention, but talking about that whole culture shift that's happening. And this movie was made in 2013. This would be even way different now.
Right. Like, it's like they're definitely the last dying breed. And both those lines you guys talked about, the Taylor Grocer line and the line about going to America, happened right after this scene. So this is where Jep basically embraces kind of like an asshole kind of personality, and they're back at his pad, and they're hanging out in his apartment for their like nightly parties,
Yeah.
and they're all talking, and everybody's there. The whole crowd is there from the previous party, and Stefania, she starts going into this like speech about blah blah and how great she is, and how she had written 11 books, and how she
Mhm.
sacrifices because she's a mother and all this. And
He calls her out on all her bullshit.
he calls her out. He's
Yeah.
like I'm a gentleman. I'm not gonna. She goes, no, I can handle it. I've got balls. And he's like, well, that's more than a gentleman can even say. And then he goes, fine, I'll say it. And he just tears her up. All
Oh
right, he
yeah, it's
calls
so
her out on
good. I love it.
everything. He's like, you're popular when you're young because nobody remembers you for the books you wrote, but for the time you spent in the bathroom. Basically, she was sleeping around. She even got her books published because she was basically dating the party leader, and they're published by party presses. And she does crappy movies, and she's a shit mom because her she's got a maid, a butler, a waiter, a driver, and like 4 babysitters that raise her
Yeah.
children because she's out partying every night. And oh yeah, and by the way, your husband's gay, and we all know it. And
Yeah.
And she said she's got the balls to handle it, but she didn't. She gets up
She
and she
fucking
just
cannot.
leaves.
And one thing that struck me about that particular conversation is that those women, that type of woman, her archetype, are the ones that write parenting articles telling poor mothers what to do, and they are insufferable. I can't fucking stand these women. And they have like, it's the classist thing, right? These upper
Right.
class women who have the babysitters and the nannies and whatever, and they love posting pictures of their super happy families on social media. They're not going to fucking Walmart with their kid in the cart and pushing them around and like doing like the shit that poor mothers do. They're not. And yet they're the ones writing these books and articles and all that stuff and getting published about their motherly experiences. And that whole scene, like the way that he tears into her, just was like chef's kiss. It was so fucking good. I loved it.
Right.
That's
like
the scene. That's the scene where he says, "I'm not a." Oh wait, is it? I think that's the scene where he says, "I'm not a misogynist. I'm a misanthropist," because he gets accused of being a misogynist for giving her shit.
Right. And he goes in the middle of his tirade. He goes, we're all on the brink of despair.
Yeah.
All we can do is look at each other in the face, keep each other company, joke a little. Don't you agree? Yeah. So he's not just talking about her. He's talking about all of them, including himself. But you're right. Like, you have like what's that influencer on like Instagram? Kiwi Farms or whatever, where you've got like, she's like a trad wife influencer and Ballerina Farm or whatever. No, Ballerina Farm is what her name is.
Ballerina, Kiwi Farm is something else.
Kiwi Farm's like some weird like pedophile thing. But you've got her, and like, she's like, I've got like 8 kids and I look beautiful in my trad dress and everything. But by the way, my husband's his dad owns JetBlue or something like that, so like so it's like, it's easy to be a trad wife and work, have 6 kids when you literally have an army of servants taking care of you, like, and you're not cleaning poop, and you're not worried about what you're going to feed him, so you got to make some like pasta surprise for them every night, or so yeah, like, absolutely, like, he called her out, and he called all of them out because he said, we're all kind of worthless, right? We're all like, he's like, I know
they're all they all have this pretentious like sense of importance, and it's almost like an oil that seeps out of their skin, but he knows that it's all bullshit. Like, you ever deal with these people, and they just like, it's almost like a slime that comes off these people, where it's like, they think that they're so fucking smart and they're so cool and all that stuff, but it's all like a front. And he is breaking that down, of like, every single line in his movie is breaking down that like, these people aren't as like what they are. Their mask is slipping under his scrutiny.
Yeah, right.
And people like Jep they're very good at breaking through those masks, even as they're wearing one.
Right. Because he's like, you're not a socialist,
Yeah.
Stefania. You own like a
Yeah.
house with like 2 pools and a wave pool,
Yeah.
and like you have a driver. If you have a
Yeah.
driver, you're not a socialist. Okay, let's just
Yeah.
get that out of the way. Well, and he leaves the party. They all leave, and he
I want to highlight one thing.
breaks her. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I want to highlight one thing about that whole conversation. I think one thing we need to remember is Jep has probably not done this before, where he's called them all out like that, and you can kind of see as he rips into her, the other friends kind of like going, "Oh boy, here we go." And I think it's because, if you look at them as like a family, it's like this little family of misfits. And the death of Eliza has shattered his mask, and now he can no longer do things he doesn't want to do. He can't let his friends continue to wear this false mask either. Because after this, we can talk about each individual character, but all of them have an experience, or they all have a moment where their lives are changed forever also. Right. And I'm also not wondering if Jep is not self-sabotaging, but he's saying what needs to be said because he has to get out also. And really, aren't they all just kind of there because of him? I mean, he's by far the most well-known, right?
Right. He's the popular one. He's kind of the catalyst for their friendships.
Yeah, well, they're his disciples, basically. And he has to get out of that. And I think that moment is like when he finds out that Eliza's dead, that moment for them is Jep ripping off the mask going, You're all sacks of garbage. We're all sacks of garbage, guys. Didn't know if you noticed, by the way. Yeah, we're all dead. We're all garbage.
Yeah, and everything is absurd. Like the entire socialite art community thing. It's so fucking absurd, and it's like it's because it is so false, and everything has to be so over the top because it's almost like they're like overcompensating for their own shallowness. So everything has to be bombastic. Everything has to be so over the top. Everything has to be ridiculous. And it's all absurd.
Right. And you're right, Fisto, because if you remember the next scene, Stefania swimming naked. She's back at her house and she jumps into her pool and she's naked. And he basically stripped her of her illusions, like it's like, a metaphysical scene where she is naked and she basically cleanses herself by swimming like a lap. Yeah, exactly. At night. And she gets out of the pool and she's naked. She's been stripped of all her self-worth or self-illusions. And she walks in and she sees what you're assuming is her husband, right? And he's swimming in a little creepy little indoor pool thing, completely ignores her, doesn't pay attention. She looks at him and she goes, she knows that Jep is telling the truth, that like, yeah, my husband is in love with some dude. And, I am a fraud in a way. And then it cuts to Jep and he's walking through Rome at night. And this is the first time you see him walking at night instead of his usual morning routine of walking. And the Rome you see in this scene is a little bit ugly, right? There's that scene where there's this like passing out girl crying in like the back of a limo that almost runs him over, right? And then there's a woman in a full burqa, like in a full, full on burqa, eating. She's sitting there like frozen while her husband or whatever is like, in his little Islamic garb, but he's just like chomping down on like Italian food. It's Italian food, and it's really interesting because that's can be a commentary about Islamic immigrants in Italy, where he's basically eating Italy. And she's not eating. And then he's walking and a bunch of drunk Japanese businessmen come out. So he's basically walking through a Rome that is decaying and being changed, being robbed by outside forces or even internal forces. And he ends up at the strip club. He goes to the kind of cool strip club, I've been to a few strip clubs, but that's a cool strip club. And he
just real quick, that whole sequence.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just gonna say the whole sequence reminded me a lot of oh my god, now that I've interrupted you, I fucking forget his name. The French author. Fucking the elemental particles. Oh my
Oh,
god.
what's his name? Welbeck.
Yes, thank you, Michelle Houellebecq. That's all I wanted to say is that scene reminded me of like a scene out of a Houellebecq movie. Anyway, go ahead.
Right, because he's the old, he's the old one, and so he goes to the strip club and he meets his mentor that he hasn't seen in 30 years, and his mentor is basically a junkie pimp
Yeah.
guy that runs a strip club, and
trades heroin or trades cocaine for heroin. I love
yeah,
that line. It's
yeah,
so
he's
funny.
like, I traded cocaine for heroin. He's like, I'm the biggest loser in Rome, but he's like a master socialite. He's basically what Jeb could end up as, kind of a burnout, kind of a loser. And he introduces him to his daughter, the 42-year-old stripper artist, right? And that's an interesting one. And that's Ramona. And Ramona's a key character because she strips for the art of it. And there's this little vague thing about money, that she always needs money, but she doesn't drink, she doesn't do drugs, so he doesn't know what her money goes to. And she comes and joins him at the table, and he bounces. He leaves her with Jeb, and she's all like, if you want to sleep with somebody, there's a stripper pole right there or whatever. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not here to sleep with you or anything. I'm just a friend of your father's, and she's like, my dad doesn't have any friends. And he's like, no, I've been friends with him 30 years ago. And, I'm an old friend. And they have kind of like she's definitely not a sophisticate, right? She's a stripper. She's not like, she's alien to his world, or at least his world now. Cause he might've been, he obviously had a darker kind of background if he's hanging out with this stripper heroin addict guy, 30 years ago. And then it's kind of a weird scene, and it doesn't like, it's still a very beautiful scene. It's a very erotic scene. It's a very like a heart of dark kind of Rome kind of scene. And he leaves. And now there's an interesting scene that I don't know if you guys caught it, right? As he's walking away after meeting Ramona. Remember, his scene walking into the strip club was filled with all the foreigners and all the kind of weird, like kind of negative kind of vibe, right? As he's walking away, he runs across this older woman, and he stops and he gives her like a very formal greeting. Did you guys catch that scene?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, you remember that? Well, so
go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a very distinguished, very beautiful woman, probably like the same age as Jeb.
Oh yeah.
And
he's going up the stairs and she's going down the stairs, and they just have like a moment.
Yes. And so that is a cameo in the movie, right? And that woman is actually, her name is Fanny Ardant, her real name, and she's a very famous French artist from like the 50s and 60s. And I think that what that scene represents is that like there still is beauty and class and culture in Rome, right? So it's a very contrast the previous like kind of negative scene, and she's also walking by herself, just like him, doing the same thing he's doing, but in the opposite direction. And I think he like really thinks about that kind of stuff. And then we have the most vulgar scene next, which is the plastic surgery scene, right? And it's a very bizarro scene, right? And it's one of the only scenes where the doctor, the professor is what they call him, right? He's sitting there and he's giving Botox to all these people, and he's telling them, "Oh, I love you. Oh, you look beautiful. You're on your journey," and all this crap, right?
Yeah.
And he's wearing he's wearing a hoodie. He's wearing a hoodie. Yeah. Right? He's vulgar. It's a vulgar scene, right? It's money, plastic, and vulgarity, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and Jeb's not like, he looks like, he's there to get his face Botoxed, obviously, but I think he's realizing how fake and gay this whole thing is, how like pathetic it is, how, like he's holding on to this, like kind of like his own thing is very like vulgar and obscene when you think about it. Well, yeah. And then he goes back to Ramona's house.
Alex, real quick. I think the moment in that scene that really shows how depraved it isn't the nun there for a medical reason?
Yes.
Like, she's not there for cause. That struck me because you've got, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're wonderful. $700. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. 700. Like, he's charging all these people, and I mean, he's basically a whore. He's telling them what they want to hear. There's that one lady who cheated on him, so he charges her full price, which I thought was hilarious. Yeah, 1,200 euros. But they charged
never come
the
back again.
Nun. Yeah, never.
But they charged the nun.
Who's there for a medical thing, and it's like, I think it's at that moment, because then when Jep gets called up, he kind of pauses. Like, it doesn't show him actually get it done.
I don't think he does get it done.
I
don't think so. I'd have to rewatch it.
I mean, in my mind, these scenes that we're discussing, you're seeing Jep's character change. You're seeing the depravity of the modern world kind of get cracked open on him, and he hangs out with a stripper and doesn't sleep with her. He sees a woman on the street and admires her for who she truly is, not whatever he would have done before. And now here he is at a fucking Botox thing, watching a nun get charged for it, and that gives him pause.
Yeah,
and I don't think it would have. Before Eliza died.
Right? No, absolutely not. Right? He obviously is familiar with that place.
Yeah, it's almost like Jep is not falling apart; he's falling together.
Right. That's actually a great way of putting it. Right. So he's falling together.
It's not falling apart. This movie is almost like the film negative of Fight Club.
Right, absolutely, right. In a way, you're absolutely right. Right, he's falling apart, and he goes right after that. He goes to see Ramona, right, the stripper, and he goes to her house, and he makes a funny comment that's kind of a dig on Americans, I think, or like us Canadians, or about her big house. He's like, "Where's your dog?"
Yeah.
Right? Did you catch that? He's like, "Where's your dog?" And she's like, "What? I don't have a dog." And, and he means their house is so big, because they all live in apartments. Well, he lives in an apartment, but and he goes, he invites her out to lunch, and they go to lunch, and it's this. There's actually another like kind of a little. When he goes to her house, she's listening to music, right? She's listening to like an Italian pop song, right?
Yeah.
And he goes to lunch, and there's this very tan, creepy looking dude with this like sunglasses that says hello to him. Right? Did you guys see that? Remember that scene, right?
Yeah.
Well, that guy, right? What is his name? His name is Antonello Vendetti, right? That's his real name in real life, right? And he is this. Yeah, Antonello Vendetti, and he is the singer of the song that she was listening to. He's actually a famous Italian pop star. Right? So she was listening to his music while she was floating around in the pool, and he takes her out to lunch, and the dude is there, like this like Italian pop superstar. And this is where we meet Andrea. Do you guys remember Andrea? Andrea is Viola's crazy as fuck son, right? And he starts spouting some insanity at him, like he's like, we're supposed to die tomorrow, and Proust says we're gonna die tomorrow,
speaks of this. Yeah, right.
Yeah. He looks like straight up Charlie Manson, Jesus kind of combination, and his mom comes and she's like, "Oh, isn't he doing so well? Isn't he doing so well?" And she's like, "He's
much better." Yeah.
She's in total denial.
If that's better, yikes!
Yeah. Right. Well, there is the scene earlier on, which we forgot to mention the scene when she goes home.
Oh yeah, he's just standing. Yeah, after she gets her ass ripped by Jep, she goes home.
That's not her. That's not her. That's not his mom. That's not his mom. That's Stefania. Viola is the one with the Heinrich Himmler's yacht.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm getting them all confused.
Yeah. But he's standing there ass naked, straight up penis shot, covered in red or something like that. And he's like,
he's all painted in red. Yeah.
He's like, "Mom, why are you blushing?" And she's like, "Andrea, you're crazy." She's like, and then he sees like the priest like macking on the nun, ordering a bottle of Cristal. It's like just this ludicrous scene, and it's wild, and he's like, "Oh, let's go to the party. You want to go to a party? What are you doing tomorrow? Let's go to a party." And this is when there's more vulgarity, right? Like this is where the starting with that plastic surgery scene is when you start getting into the vulgarity. and they go to a party, and the party is like a very douchey party. Like it's, right away, it starts off with that weird douchey like a knife throwing thing where like it turns into like a modern art thing, and they're at the house of some guy who's like the
total piece
Italy's
of shit.
Italy's most important like art collector, and him and Ramona, Jep and Ramona are coming down the stairs, and he's all like, "Oh, Jep, welcome. Let me take pictures. Oh, you're beautiful." And she's like, "Is he taking a piss? What's going? Who's this douchebag? He's like, "Oh, he's the most famous art collector of modern art," and he's got this really grotesque thing going on with that little girl, right?
Yeah.
Right. Where there's this like live performance painting that this little girl is doing, and
she doesn't want to do it. Like she's forced to do it. That scene was to me the grossest scene. Even though you don't know if anything's weirder than that is going on with that little girl, but just the fact that she's forced to do these fucking bullshit,
right. She's forced to do this, like she's crying and she's shooting. It's a really gross scene, and
it's so gross.
And you're like, oh, this is a pizza party. You know what I mean? This is like, these people are vampires. They're literally like drinking and profiting off the young. It's like these grotesque people, and even the people in the crowd are not the usual kind of crowd around Jep. They're these like kind of like hipper, kind of younger kind of crowd, and they're all really gross and like kind of vulgar. And Ramona, the stripper, is the one that's
she's like, I want to leave.
Yeah, no, I don't like this.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't like this. And they leave. And the most beautiful scene in the movie happens right after this. And it's the one with the keys. And he goes, this is Stefano. Yes. And he pulls out the keys, and he's this very like interesting looking guy. He's a very like handsome guy with a cane. He's a younger guy, but he's got a cane. He walks with a cane, and he's got this case. And how cool would it be to have that case or to be that guy, And he opens this case, and there's all these keys, and these keys could be like keys you find in a Dungeons and Dragons game type of thing. Like they're not like modern keys. They're these like Renaissance era keys, and they're the keys to all these museums in Rome. And he takes them through these museums with a candelabra, and it is like this gorgeous scene where they're going through, the three of them are the two of them are following him through these like, through all these, ancient and Renaissance busts and all these beautiful art, and, through the museum at night. Like I would do anything to do that.
This is the scene where I'm like, I've been wanting to talk about the lighting in this fucking movie. It is so intentional and so beautiful. And this is the scene where they're going through the museums at night, where it's just like, the cinematography and the lighting is just, I don't know. It's so fucking intentional. And this is okay. So, I had to look up what the film stock was because go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think they make it like a catacomb. I think that's
right.
I think that's or like an ossuary almost. I think that's what you're maybe saying.
So I had to look up what the film stock was because it was, it seemed to me like whatever they were shooting on had almost no, I won't use the technical term, but like almost like it wasn't exposed the way that you would expect a movie to be exposed. Like they did it on purpose. And I think so looking up what the film stock was, it was just your standard Kodak. I thought maybe it was shot on Orwo because it was so grainy, but it had to have been something that they did in post-processing or something that they did in camera to get this exposure where the blacks are so black. And then it makes there are some scenes where 90% of the frame is black. And then there's just like a statue is illuminated or something like that. Right. And so those scenes are, it's the sort of thing where you watch it a second time to see like, where is my attention supposed to be in this shot? And this is my film dorkery. So, the technical stuff in this movie is some of the stuff that I was
it's a
pretty strong
beautiful,
attention to.
beautiful scene. You know, it's a weird, no, weird. It's a magical, like spiritual scene.
Yeah.
Because at one point they walk by the princesses
Mm-hmm.
playing cards. These old, it's almost like Stefano's like the spirit of Rome in a way. He's like it's like a Dante's trip through like the past, and you walk by these princesses and they're all old ladies playing cards, and he's like, "Good evening, Principesses."
That was so funny. It was so funny.
Right. And,
but if you look at the lighting in there, it's like a Renaissance painting. That's my first thought, is that like this is a still. You could take this shot as a still, and it could be a painting of these women sitting there.
With like a nod to the dogs playing cards.
Yeah, right. that sort of thing. But
loved it.
Yeah.
And Ramona asked Stefano. She goes, "How do you have all these keys? How did they come to get And he goes, "Because I'm trustworthy." That's like his only answer.
He says, "Because I am a trustworthy man."
Because I'm a trustworthy man. Yeah, that's such a good line. I'm a trustworthy man. So he has the keys to ancient Rome, or the spirit of Rome. And he gave him a spiritual journey through these museums, and they end up in the gardens of the Villa de Medici. Actually, is where they're at when she takes the photo of them, and then bam, next scene, you get the crazy moment where Andrea kills himself, right? And you get the funeral scene. So Andrea kills himself by slamming his car. He goes off the rails, right? And you got Jep and Ramona, and he's buying her a dress.
She's going into a world she has never been in before, like this sort of socialite funeral thing, and she's the outsider. She's the characters watching the movie. Like, she doesn't know what the fuck's going on,
right?
And he has to explain to her the etiquette and all that stuff. And what I really, really love about the funeral scene, I don't know if you're going to go into it, but I have to mention it.
Keep going.
He's explaining to her the etiquette of how to play the game. Even at a funeral, you can still be playing the fucking game. And he's doing it very, very well. But then as he's carrying the casket, he can't fucking play the game anymore. He breaks down and he starts to cry. And I'm just like, that was so well done. Like, it's
just a powerful scene.
Yeah.
Because they're in that scene, like the priest goes, will some friends stand up and carry the casket? And they're all looking around. They're all looking around because Andrea didn't have any friends because he's a nut. He's like he's crazy, right? And you see Jep, and he looks at Romano, and like they do a little head nod, and they get up, and it's it's Jep, Romano, it's the weird silent poet guy that like hasn't said a word at all in the entire movie, and the toy seller, the pervert, and they're the ones that stood up. They stood up to do it for their friend Viola, right? And there's even like you hear the toy maker, Lalo's is his name, Lalo's wife, she goes, you're back, be careful. But he does it anyways, right? So these shallow, materialistic kind of degenerates actually care about each other. They stood up and they did it. And I was thinking, what does Andrea's death represent? What does Andrea mean? And in a way, because he's so contrasted with the previous scene through the museum, I was thinking maybe in a way he represents the youthful spirit of like Jep, right? That like the enthusiasm, that love of literature, because Andrea does, when he does talk, he talks about like Proust, books, and Flaubert and stuff, right? And it's that youthful spirit gone mad. It's basically he represents like that chaotic energy of the artist or the the socialite gone mad, and I think that part of Jep dies at that funeral. He carries that part of himself with the coffin out of, into death. And like right away after that, you get, the scene where now he's we have time shifts now. This is where the weirdest time like dilation in the movie happens, and this is where he's obviously no longer like he's like in the edges of Rome. He's with Ramona and they're in bed and they're talking about loving each other without sleeping with each other, and he's making her breakfast and something happens and you're like, what's going on here, right? Like she just disappears, and the first time I saw this movie, I had to like stop the movie and like rewind it and go, well, what happened? Like, what's going on, right? Because I was drinking a little bit too much wine myself when I first saw it, and I completely like missed what was going on. But it's clear after a few minutes that she died. Ramona died.
And the movie does not linger on it, and that's why you had to go back. Like, even as I was watching it, I'm like, okay, what? I didn't go back, but I paused the movie and I was thinking about it, and I was trying to remember all the scenes leading up to it. I'm like, yeah, she definitely died. She definitely died, and he does not want to linger on that, so the movie does not linger on that. And that's when that's the whole show don't tell thing. That's why it's a movie making phrase, not a book writing phrase. But
right.
So they're showing through this time dilation and this like not lingering on it at fucking all that Jep himself is trying real hard to not linger on that, because I think that he probably actually did feel something for her.
Right.
And that's why they don't stick to it.
Because it's confusing, because you've got this weird scene when all of a sudden he's in some weird like seaside town and he's buying up like 2 packs of cigarettes, and there's like motocross on the TV and some young dude is like mad dogging him, and it's just like this weird scene. And then he's looking at the Costa Concordia, right, which is the real, like this that shit was not happened, CGI. That was an actual picture of it. It just happened right when the movie was being filmed. And it was basically a cruise ship in the Mediterranean that, like I'm going to put it
capsized
on the screen real here. That capsized and kind of sat around like
I think it's still there, isn't it? Or did they finally clean it up?
I think they finally tore it up and everything.
It up. Yeah, it got salvaged a while back.
Yeah, but he's looking at the Costa Concordia, and it's like she's obviously dead, right? Like, and the irony of it for him is that he's at the seaside town, and the ship sinking, and is back to this water kind of symbolism, and he meets his girlfriend Eliza at the beginning when he's young, and he's swimming, and the boat almost runs him over. So now you have the sunken boat, and it's just this. It's kind of a repetitive motif of the sea, the boat. He stares at his ceiling, which is like the sea, and and he is like in despair mode now, And we go back to another party, and he's almost in like full blown degenerate mode. He's not like, but now he's like a total downer. And the scene is interesting because it shows you in this party. There's some cool lines in it. That it's the same kind of party like the first party. There's music and a DJ and everybody's dancing and they're doing like a little conga line thing. And he's talking to this woman and he's like, the trains at our parties are the best in the world because they go nowhere. Because they go nowhere, which is like his life. Like, it's like their parties. They go nowhere. There's nothing. And she kind of gives him like a kind of a stink eye. But what's interesting in that whole scene with the party, unlike in the previous ones, it shows the kitchen and the bathroom. It shows the behind the scenes of the party. And the kitchen's a mess. It looks like a real fucking party. Like how we, if I was throwing a party, I'd have a mess in my kitchen. And it's got like the fat girl, the fat woman, and she's out there just doing cocaine and she's like snorting away. And like, there's people like acting like assholes to each other. And it's kind of this negative scene. And it cuts to Jep and he's sitting with his maid and they're drinking together. And he's ignoring the party. Like, it's like that. And then of course, actually that's after that weird scene with the swingers that like, oh, we can do something nobody else in Rome can do. And he's got like, they're like having this weird, like they put on this weird sex show for him and he's not interested and leaves and he goes to hang out with his maid instead.
I thought that was very funny.
It's like a weird scene.
This is not doing it for me anymore.
Right. Right. And this is it. I think that party was when he had like he was done. He was done. And what I love about this movie is that, like a good novel, like any good work of art, it has mirror elements to it, right? And if you guys remember, the first scene was a party followed by him going to an art exhibition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this scene is also a party, and the next scene is also an art exhibition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first art exhibition was the Talia, the creator or whatever, who's the retarded,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
This one, though, is completely different. He goes to see that exhibition of the guy that had a picture taken of him every single year of his life, and it's all like all over the walls of this beautiful kind of ruin, and Jeb is looking at all these pictures, and it's just pictures of this guy's face and smiling, sometimes frowning, sometimes making weird faces.
Yeah,
and
all the way from like childhood all the way to present day. Yeah.
Right. And Jeb starts crying. And there's something about this scene that got me too. I don't know what it was. It was just like this. There's like a level of sincerity in this scene of like, God, we get old, we get old and we age. And there was something very raw and emotional about this scene. It's just him looking at pictures of this guy aging.
Yeah.
And the guy, the artist himself, was standing there, and he wasn't, you can contrast him to Talia, the creator. There was no there's no pretension in him. There was nothing. It was like, he was just like, yeah, these are just me aging, this is it. This is life. This is humanity, and he is just like, he's very touched by it, and I think that's where he breaks. This is where he starts to have the first of his two kind of like major realizations.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to the scene at the wedding with the cardinal. What do you guys think about the cardinal?
The fucking cardinal.
Yeah. He was very funny.
Yeah.
I mean, he's skewering religion. Like Jep is going through all of these things, and perhaps he thinks to himself, maybe I just need to go back to church. And the cardinal is the example of the church that you should not go back to, where he's more interested in his recipes than anything having to do with proper spirituality.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of in these last scenes of the movie with the cardinal and the saint and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of Italian culture stuff that we might be missing from our frame of reference. Like, I'm not only not Italian, but I'm also not an Italian Catholic. So I think there might be like a cultural if you were an Italian Catholic, you would probably get far more out of those scenes than someone like me who's a freaking nothing Canadian.
Yeah.
I don't have much religiosity in my life, so it's like there's some stuff there that I feel like I might be missing, but that doesn't make it any less impactful. It's just, if I had that frame of reference, that cultural frame of reference, it would probably have more impact, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think a key line in that is when they're talking about how this cardinal might be in line to the papacy, and it's showing that even the papacy, even the church, isn't immune to the effects
political.
of
It's all politics.
Are not immune to the effects of the modern world and the decay that everyone else is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Jep meets the cardinal and he's like, oh wait, this is just one of my asshole friends in a frock. Perfect. Yeah. It's the same kind of guy. I think the saint contrasts that heavily. I have a lot to say about the saint, but I want to hold off on that.
Right. Well, the saint's my favorite part of the movie. The ending scene.
Good.
Right?
Good.
But,
so I didn't miss it.
So I agree with you, Lisa, that we're probably missing a lot of like intertextual Italian Roman Catholic kind of digs and hints. Like we were talking before we went live. Paolo Sorrentino, he did that movie. He does that television show, the Young
Pope. Yeah.
Right. So he has a lot of Roman Catholic themes in his work. And I think,
it would be hard not to. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church is so omnipresent in Italy. it would be difficult not to have that in.
I mean,
the
how
word.
can you separate the
Yeah.
Roman Catholic Church from Rome?
Yeah.
It's just it's inseparable, right?
Yeah.
And but from a outsider perspective, right? I think this scene works even for somebody like us, right? Because you know, Jep's down. He is having a spiritual crisis of like immense proportions, right?
This is what you
I
call
mean,
that a dark night of the soul.
oh yeah, he is
moment.
having he's journeying to the end of the night, right? Like and he, you know, his love of his life, Eliza, that he's been kind of like locked into since he was like 19 years old for 35 something years, who dumped him. She's dead. And then he finally like meets another woman and he falls in love and now she's dead. And, you know, his friend's son dies and he's just basically like, you know, he's staring at mortality and he's staring at like the end, and he wants to talk to this guy. He wants to talk to this cardinal, this guy who's an exorcist, which is kind of an insight, kind of a joke like thing going on there. And he wants to talk to this guy, and this guy is a total tool, right? All he cares about is talking about his, you know, duck
cooking
hunting
recipes.
cooking recipes, and like he's just the socialite. He's a wannabe Jep. He's a wannabe Jep in a cardinal's robe. And you know, for a lot of people, this is the truth, is that a lot of people want to get religion. They're yearning for God. They're yearning for Christ, and they go to some churches, and their churches are mundane and boring, and there's nothing there. You know what I mean? Or it's like a club, or it's just, they're yearning for spirituality, but they find nothing there. And this is exactly what, he's saying in this movie, because it is a condemnation of the Roman Catholic Church. And I'm not going to condemn the RCs because that's their thing, but I can see, because I have friends that are Roman Catholics and they feel very much how Jep feels in this scene.
Yeah.
But it turns into a beautiful scene now, if you guys remember, because he walks away from the cardinal and the people, and he runs into Stefania. And Stefania is the woman that he tore into at that party earlier. He's the one that he just tore into her. And they're dancing together, and they have a very intimate moment where, it's kind of jokeful. And he asks her, "Have we ever slept together?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, at least we have something to look forward to, And it's a very like touching, intimate moment. And it's one of the first times you really see Jep become like warm, in a kind, warm way. He does it with Ramona once or twice, but it's a very loving scene between two friends that are obviously suffering. He's suffering, he's lost, she's suffering, she's lost. They're both aging, they're both, and they show this kind of kindness and warmth towards each other as a replacement for the spiritual rejection he got from, a cardinal in the church, and I felt that was a very powerful scene.
Yeah, I definitely liked how him and Viola sort of made up there, and that line is very funny. Where after they're talking about whether or not they've slept together, he says, "Oh, well, now we have something to look forward to, at least."
Right,
not that it would ever happen, but it's like, oh, at least there's one thing in the world that I haven't done yet. That's fantastic.
Right. Well, and then Fisto, do you want to take us into the scene with the saint, the dinner, and who the saint is?
So, what was her name? Saint Mary. Is that right?
I don't remember, but she's
Maria.
not really a saint.
Yeah.
They just
she's not technically a saint. She's just Sister Maria.
Yeah.
So the cardinal makes a big point of pointing that out. He's like, "Well, she's not technically a saint.
Technically a saint." Yeah. So anyway, so she's this woman, and clearly it's a nod to like a Mother Teresa type, right? We're talking about, this is where my whole idea about women being a mirror for Jep, to be like, this is. Women are the way God talks to Jep, whether we like, whether he likes it or not. And the saint comes in at the end of all this, and she's coming to Rome for whatever reason. I think she's getting honored at some kind of ceremony
by the Pope. The Pope is actually here.
Yeah. So she's getting honored, but she wants to have dinner with Jep because she read his book and liked it very much. Which that right there gave me pause and gave me a moment of uh-oh, because what is this nun lady doing reading Jep's stuff and like really, really liking it? Like that especially once you see her, she's this ancient. At one point they establish she's 104 years old. You know, she can barely function, doesn't have any teeth, and it's just is an old nun, which that's fine, but like,
but very childlike and playful. She plays with her feet while she's sitting there.
Yeah, right. Sitting there with her shoe, and then her shoe falls off, and like everybody's like, "What?" Like it freaks every. Yeah, at the ceremony, it freaks everybody out. But like, she's really not like anyone else up. She's not like anyone else in the movie up until this point.
Yeah.
And there were a couple things that stood out to me about her. One is when they're at the dinner at Jep's house, and she's got that. I'm going to call him a handler. I don't remember what his name was in the film, but it's like her handler. This guy,
it's real creepy.
Who's yeah, well,
he displays her like he's a showman, and he contrasts a lot with the guy who's the actual magician with the giraffe. I don't know if we've discussed that scene yet.
And so we skipped that scene. Let's pause real fast, okay?
Yeah.
Because we skipped the scene, right? After the
giraffe.
We skipped the giraffe, right?
After what a great
Ramona dies. Jep is back in Rome. He's back in like the regular, his stomping grounds. And Romano has this play that he's been, wanting to put on the whole time, right? And
yes.
And his play actually goes well, except that his bitch ass girlfriend isn't even paying attention. She's on like her phone the whole time and like walks
out when it's done.
Yeah.
Right. And doesn't say anything about it. And then Jep walks into like this like. I don't know. It looks like he's like inside the Coliseum almost, right?
Yeah.
And there's this fucking giraffe there. It's like this giraffe there, and a guy comes out and he's like somebody that knows him. He goes, "Oh, Jep." And he's like, "Well, is there a giraffe?" He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this giraffe disappear." And he's like,
"I'm working on a trick."
Yeah. And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, and Jep goes, "Can you make me disappear?"
Yeah.
And then he goes, "No. If I can make people disappear, do you think I'd be doing this?" And he like leaves, and then Romano comes in. He goes, "Jep, I've come to say goodbye." He's like, "Well, what do you mean you come to say goodbye?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm leaving. I'm leaving Rome. I'm going back to my hometown. Rome has let me down. I've been here for 40 years, and Rome has let me down. And you're the only person I want to say goodbye to. So I'm leaving."
Yep. And the magician guy says it's all a trick, which gets repeated throughout the rest of the film. I think it's said at least a couple more times that it's all a trick. And so that's why that handler guy representing the saint reminded me more of like the magician guy than he did any sort of like whatever he was supposed to be, some sort of religious representative or something. But he reminded me of more of a carnival magician than the guy who was the actual carnival magician.
Right. He's a really weird looking dude too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go back to the saint.
Yeah,
I'll comment on him because I didn't like the handler to begin with, but then I think by the end I understood what the handler's purpose was. But the thing is, so the handler's talking the whole time, talking about all these great things the saint does and this and that and the other thing. And then Jep gets up the courage to be like, well, why doesn't she speak for herself? Because they're supposed to have like an interview or something, or they're talking about potentially doing an interview, but the handler explains the saint doesn't.
It's not Jep that says that. It's not
the
Jep.
editor.
It's the editor. It's the
dwarf.
dwarf.
The editor says it. All right. Well, anyway, the first time the saint speaks, she's like, "I took a vow of poverty. You can't speak about poverty. You have to live it." And it's kind of a cheesy little line.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's spoken with some authority. I mean, she basically said, "Shut the fuck up." Like,
and she also says,
"Stop bothering me."
Yeah, and she also says, "Do you know why I eat roots? Because the roots are so important, right?"
That's a little bit later.
That one.
Is that later?
Yeah.
I thought that was
it is. Yeah, that's at my favorite scene, and I'm that line is yes, that line is incredibly important.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's obviously old. She's obviously frail. This is not anybody that like Jep typically probably interacts with by any stretch of the imagination. And therefore, I think she challenges him quite a lot, especially when he finds her passed out in his bedroom because she had like a little fell and like she decided to take a nap, and he's just kind of like, "What the hell's going on? This woman is not who I expected." Anyway, later on.
Well, I want to interject real quick because there's a thought. When you're watching this scene, you're watching this scene and it's obviously a performance, right? This whole thing's a performance because you remember they invite the fake the nobles that are they invite
that's right.
some nobles that are not, they're nobles, but they're not the nobles that they wanted to invite. So they paid them to pretend to be somebody else, and now they're poor, so they took the job. So there's a whole performance thing to it. And you look at the guy, the handler, and you're like, okay, this guy's a showman. He's a scam artist. He is a scumbag because he looks kind of slimy, right? He's got this and you look at the saint, the woman, and she's like, okay, she's like 100. She's older than Moses, she's obviously not there. She's, she hasn't said anything throughout the movie. All her scenes, she's just decrepit, right? She's probably insanely senile, and this guy and the church is basically dragging her out, to do nothing. Like you immediately, like you, the viewer, at least I was, immediately went skeptic atheist on this whole scene, right? I was this is this is a farce. This is a farce, and then, she's there to give an interview to Jep, right? And Jep and the editor, she's like, okay, so how about the interview? And the guy goes, whoa, we didn't agree to the interview. There must have been a misunderstanding. And then she gets pissed, right? She gets pissed because the whole point of the whole party was to do this interview. And you feel like the editor does. You're like, okay, this is all a scam. She knows this is some decrepit old lady, this old nun that this weirdo is like dragging around. And of course the Catholic Church is like all fake because the representative of the Catholic Church so far has been this jerk of a cardinal, who Jep goes off of. He goes off on him, he just calls him out, calls him a fraud basically. And then she speaks, and when he goes, okay, let her speak, right? When that whole line, it's like the atheist calling her out, let her speak for herself, right? She's calling out the farce basically. And then the scene pans to her, and you're like, okay, is she going to fart or do something weird or something awkward? Or is she really completely senile? But no, she actually is authoritative and drops wisdom, you're like, oh, shuts everybody the fuck up, and I'm like, oh, this guy's for real. These people are for real. It's not, she might be a saint after all.
The next scene, well, she kind of proves it because, everyone's putting on a show. Everybody's doing this, and none of them know what authentic power looks like, right? Can we say that's probably accurate? I mean, they have money, they have influence, and they have charm, but nobody has actual power. And I noticed, so it's the next morning, right? And Jep comes out onto his balcony, the one that overlooks the Colosseum, and it's covered in what looked to be like storks of some description, right?
Yeah.
And there's 20, 30 storks.
They're flamingos.
Flamingos. Okay,
flamingos, yeah.
Flamingos packed onto his porch. And the handler's out there, and he hushes them. He says they're migrating, and they're taking a break. And Jep's like, what the fuck? What are all these birds doing here? And then it looks to the saint, and then that's when she drops the line, do you know why I roots?
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Are important. Yeah. Right. She's explaining something to him about that. And then she has that very slight, deathly old woman breath out, and all the birds take up and fly away. And it struck me that, she dismissed the birds. They were there because she was there.
Yeah, that was one of those.
Yeah, that's when things got a little weird, a little wild. And I liked how they took that. They took that idea that the saints, the actual real saints, have an affinity with animals that normal people don't get. That's
where the whole magical realism shit kind of. That scene and the scene where they're looking for the little girl, Francesca, she's running around.
Yes,
those two scenes are probably the more. Magical realism kind of thing in the movie.
And the most dangerous moments for Jep come from women that he would not expect it from. A little girl and an old woman are the most dangerous people that he runs into this entire time.
Well, the maiden and the crone are two very specific archetypes, right?
Yeah. So she dismissed the birds. She didn't frighten them. She didn't startle them. She's like, you can go now. And they all listen to her. Which I think, I don't know if Jep realizes exactly what's going on there, but that's that moment where it's like, bro, you are close to something very, very, very dangerous and very, very, very old and very, very powerful. And it's like
Right.
you've been getting drawn to this moment. And like the guy with the giraffe says, it's a trick. It's just you just got to flip reality. It's just on the other side of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a slight glimpse. Like the nun's power level is so high, her messing around with the birds is the most you can handle without your entire existence being obliterated in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
like
so let me blow your guys' mind with some
bring it. Let's go.
Some stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys remember in the wedding scene when they're talking about the cardinal, the rumor is that, oh, he used to be a very powerful exorcist, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in after in the party scene, like when the nun goes to the bathroom, right? She gets up and goes to the bathroom. And that's when she disappears and she ends up like, going to sleep on Jeb's floor and is right. But after that scene, Jeb basically calls out the cardinal and he basically tells him like, hey man, like, do you remember when we talked? I tried talking to you at the wedding, and I was really looking for answers, and you cared more about stuff. And I just realized that you're basically a fraud. Like you care more about social status. And he's pretty pissed off. And they cut to the scene when everybody's leaving the party. They're getting into like their limos and their Bentleys and stuff. And Jeb walks up to the cardinal's car and goes, "Hey, look, I'm sorry. I am sorry for acting like a dick at the party. I was just kind of upset. That type of thing."
Right.
And he goes, I do have a question for you. What I was really interested about is, were you actually an exorcist, right? And I think what he's asking is, can you exorcise my life?
Yeah.
And the cardinal does this kind of dick move where he doesn't answer him. He just basically gives him a priestly blessing, right? And then rolls up the window and takes off, right? Now let's drop some knowledge real fast. So, and I saw this with my own eyes this past Sunday. In a Eastern Orthodox baptism, and I'm pretty sure it's the same way in the Roman Catholic baptism, right? One of the things, I got to see a baptism this Sunday of one of the children at our church, and it was such a cool experience because it wasn't like your Protestant baptism where they just dunk you in the water, you're born again, and then everybody drops. No, the whole liturgy was focused around this baptism, multiple like things, and it was just this beautiful thing. But one of the things that the priest did, and the priest does at every Orthodox baptism, is he breathes on the baby or the person being baptized, right? He like goes, breathes during the rite of baptism, right? And he does it 3 times. He does everything 3 times, but he breathes, right? And what does the breathing mean? He's actually exorcising, right? The priest is exorcising any evil spirit during the baptism, right? Mm-hmm. So often saints, priests will breathe on you, right? And what it does is it represents, it is the Holy Spirit, right? The Holy Spirit is breath and air, right? So what the nun does is she breathes it's the Holy Spirit from her, right? And you contrast her, who has the true Holy Spirit, to the fake ass cardinal, who is just a fraud, basically, right? Or a spiritual fraud. Yeah. And she has she basically used the Holy Spirit, and she goes, there's a line she says, which I think is pretty cool. She goes, "Do you know that I know all their Christian names?" And she's talking about the birds. She's like, "I know all these birds." Right. That's a very biblical thing, right? Knowing the true names of things, right? So this is a holy person. This is for reals, right? And she asked Jeb, she goes, "Jeb, how come you haven't written another book?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She drops, he's sitting here with this holy person that he probably thought was kind of a fraud before. He's disillusioned with the church. And now you've got this 104-year-old nun who just, breathed on the flamingos. And she goes, how come you haven't written any other book? And he kind of gives her this like, he tells her like, I've been searching for the great
looking
beauty.
and I haven't found it.
Yeah. And then she drops the root line on him, right? Which is
that's when she does it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. She goes, "You got to find your roots." And the next scene is well, there's two like scenes that kind of tie in together, and they're both about finding your roots.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a scene where the nobles go back home after the party,
Yeah.
and the woman's like, I need to go downstairs. And you realize that they live in their palace, but they live in a crappy apartment above their ancestral palace, and their actual palace is now a museum. And she goes through all these like artifacts of her family that probably go back 1,000 years, and she has to pay money for a display that has her crib, the one that she was born in, right?
Yeah.
And she's listening to this like computerized voice tell her family history and the stories of her being born. And it's just like, oh my God, you're like, is that Europe now? A
Yeah.
museum? Are we just, is that it? So Jep goes back, he goes back to the island. He goes back to the Mediterranean, wherever he met Eliza, and he goes to the lighthouse, and that's where the movie ends. He goes back to his roots. And I think, it ends, and I want to read you the line he like recites, which is basically, I think you're right, Lisa, that this movie is the book that he's going to write, but it's probably the opening line of his novel that I hope, he writes, and it's, this is the line right here. This is how it all always ends, with death. But first there was life, hidden beneath the blah, blah, blah. It's all settled beneath the chitter chatter and the noise, silence and sentiment, emotion and fear, the haggard, inconsistent flashes of beauty, and then the wretched squalor and miserable humanity, all buried under the cover of the embarrassment of being in the world, blah, blah, blah. Beyond there is what lies beyond. I don't deal with what lies beyond. Therefore, let this novel begin. After all, it's just a trick. Yes, it's just a trick.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie ends. And you're like, okay, I just watched like a 3-hour movie that just floored me, like, like it's just, I love this movie. I love it so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.
And the ending credits is basically
you're
just like on a barge or whatever, going down a river in the middle of Rome, and you're just going under these bridges and whatever. I watched the whole credits thing because I had to pay attention to the hell they filmed on. Didn't say in the credits though,
right?
But yeah. The flashes of beauty. That's why I had to look that up, because like it was shot on Kodak, but the way it had to have been something in the post processing. It made the exposure so, just like if you've ever watched a Fellini film shot on that black and white film stock, that it's called Ferrania, and back in the day it was an Italian film stock. If you've ever watched 8.5, how it's really, really stark. Like there's bright, bright, bright whites and dark, dark, dark blacks, and not a whole lot of shadows in between. And although this film is color, I was like, what the fuck was it filmed on? Because it's like, I thought maybe it was Orwa. Orwa is a German film stock, and I don't know if they were even making it in 2013 anymore. For a while there, it wasn't being made anymore. They started making it again a couple years ago, but because that film is not only very, very grainy, but it also has like a very distinct color grading versus Kodak. Nowadays, the only film stock that movies are shot on now is just Kodak. That's it. Right. I think I've seen a couple music videos that are shot on Orwell, but yeah, it's just the way that the light is. Like what was the line that he says right at the end of the movie? Like the flashes of beauty, and that's why I'm paying attention to the entire film, and then he says that line, and I'm like, yes, right. If you actually pay attention to the visuals, I'd have to watch the movie twice, but I'm very sure that the lighting, you're supposed to pay attention to where those colors are and where the lighting is and all that stuff, because there's a lot of dark that you don't see, like the depth of field or whatever. In some scenes, especially the party scenes, it's almost like it's like watching a stage play where there's not a whole lot of light outside of where everybody's standing around, and like everything else is super dark, so you don't get a whole lot of like depth. on those scenes, but the scenes in where he's walking around Rome and it's the music is softer and you see the old architecture and stuff like that, everything is lit. Like there's you can see the entire frame, right? And all the depth, like it was so intentional. All the lenses, all the lens choices, the camera, like it was, I mean, all movies should have this intentionality, but some movies have it more than other movies do, right? And yeah, I just thought it was really some very interesting creative choices, visual creative choices too.
Right. Well, so it's interesting that you bring up Fellini, because if you like read up about this movie, it's almost meant to be a sequel, a follow up to La Dolce Vita, right? Mm-hmm. Which is Fellini's movie, which is also about a writer, but a young one, like in his 20s, who's kind of like going through the same exact stuff Jep is, but at the end of that movie, he's not happy, he's not content, and I think Jep does become content, right?
Yeah, and he absolutely does.
Right. And that's what I liked about the movie is that, like, you know, he went through his journey, this journey of discovery of himself, and he realized that, you know, it's not the end. You know, there's still, you can still go back to your roots. And I mean, that's what Romano did, right? He went back to his roots. You know, he became authentic. You know, he decided, I just need to go get out of Rome. Like, I'm not going to ever be Jeb. You know, I'm not going to get the cool, dark, schnozzy goth girl, and I'm going to end up like, you know, like a chump for the rest of my life. So he went back to, you know, wherever he came from. And like Jeb realized that, I think that was it, you know, like this is it. He needs to go back to his roots, which is being a writer and, you know, love and where he came from, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you guys liked it. Fisto, I'm glad you liked it, man. Like it's,
yeah, man.
Did you think it was a masculine movie?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I see what you mean by that, because Jep is stoic. He is the protagonist. Things happen or don't happen because he wants them to happen or not happen.
Right.
He's not necessarily reacting to what everybody else is doing, or really, you know, marching to their drum or doing the things that everyone is doing. That's why I love that first scene so much, because when he pops up, he's the only authentic person in the building. Mm-hmm. And right. In my mind, there are very few things more masculine than an authentic man. I am what I am. Fuck you. You know, at the end of the day.
Right. Like, and he's so affected by the women in his life, you know, like everything is from, you know, the perspective of, you know, it's, I said that I really wanted, you know, the opinion of Lisa and your wife, because I felt that this movie, you know, on the surface, if you can go, oh, it's a movie about a writer in Rome and a bunch of socialites. And it's, you know, it's almost like very like dandy coded, if you think about it, right? Like at least visually and kind of thematically, you think it's a very dandy-ish movie, but no, it's actually a very masculine movie.
Yeah.
You cannot do a sex swap on this movie at all. You cannot do a gender swap.
Couldn't. It's also the type of thing where if it were a novel, it's the type of story that agents are not looking for now. They don't want this point of view. They don't want to, why would I want to publish another book about the fucking white male experience, blah, 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 but fucking whatever. Yeah. This came out in 2013 and it's Italian, so it was able to be told.
Right. But yeah, exactly. I mean, this movie would never get made in the United States. I'm actually kind of shocked that it won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film. You know,
things didn't start going real weird till 2016. That's when it started getting real weird. Yeah, like I'm just filling with stickers right now, but it didn't start getting weird till about 2016. That's when you see it in books too. In the early 2010s, you were still able to tell these sorts of stories.
Yeah, because this movie is about a man, a straight man, a man that indiscriminately sleeps with women.
Oh,
It's a
fucking gross.
it's a
Dirty.
movie about traditional Rome and the beauty of it's basically like a meme almost if you look at the visuals
Yeah.
of it.
Mhm.
He even practices the traditional Italian diet of cigarettes and alcohol.
Yeah, and he
Exactly,
has
right?
his shirt is perfectly unbuttoned with the gold chain and the chest hair, like just so fucking Italian.
Yeah, he's gonna live to be 130 years old.
Yeah.
Perfect, perfectly bronzed.
There's a line in the movie that wounded me because when he's at the strip club or whatever, he tells that there's a line where he goes, "Oh, your dad taught me that vodka was vulgar."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh no, I like vodka. Great."
Yeah.
That was a great line. He taught me everything I knew. That vodka.
Meanwhile, the guy who says that vodka is vulgar is a fucking heroin addict. So
and
like
a pimp, and his
Don't worry
daughter,
about it.
and he lets his daughter strip at his own club. So like, who's he to say what the fuck vodka is, right?
Right, but
It's so
yeah,
funny.
that wounded me a bit when he said that. I was like, well, I guess I'm never drinking vodka again, But yeah, like this movie, come on, man, this movie would never. It's interesting because in the internet discussion right now, we're talking about like the LA Times is like the list of best 100 movies, and
I haven't even looked at it. I don't even care.
it's really bad.
I don't want to look at it.
Well, they have the top movie as
They're
Parasite.
Yeah,
It's
I haven't
interesting
seen
because they have the
Parasite
top movie of the 25th century, the 21st century, not 25th century. The first 25 years of the first quarter of the 21st century, the best movie according to the LA Times or some other douchebaggy like place.
I think it was the New York Times. Yeah.
Yeah, is Parasite. Bong
Mhm.
Joon-ho's Parasite, right? Now, Parasite, interestingly enough, is another movie that won Academy Award as the best foreign movie. And it cheated. They gave it the best movie of the year, even though it should have been the best foreign movie of the year. The best movie of the year should have gone not to a foreign Korean movie, but to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that was up against it that year, which was the best movie.
Oh, as if they were going to give it to
Quentin
Tarantino
yeah,
film.
no,
Yeah, no, that wasn't going to happen.
But so they have the best movie of the first quarter century. Parasite, which by the way, The Great Beauty is much better than Parasite. Parasite's not a bad movie, but it's also a movie that deals with class in the same way this movie does. But it's a very empty, like full of just kitsch. It's not a very deep movie. And once you start analyzing like the meaning of that movie, it goes nowhere. It's a movie you see once, like there's a great like a flood scene in it, but then the rest of it is just filled with like just nonsense. It's not even the best Korean movie of the last 25 years. But yeah, like this movie would not get any traction today.
It would not get greenlit. No,
not even that. It would definitely not get. And not only that, but you have a movie about straight men sleeping with women, and you also have tons of like basically dissing like upper class progressives in this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of shade thrown at the liberal upper class liberal shit.
The champagne liberals, the limousine liberals, and it's very interesting. But I love this movie because it really captures the your flow through life, because it makes me think like, why don't I write a novel? Right? Where's my novel at? I've been talking about it for the last 20 years now. I wrote a bunch, but it just where is it? Where is it, Alex? Like,
where is it?
Yeah,
get on it.
and I do, I also think a lot about stuff where I often forget that I'm 42 years old. Okay. I forget how old I am. And I think about, I was talking to my friend, Zach, who I've known since we were in third grade. Him and I were talking, and I told him about my grandmother passing away. And he's like, and his mom passed away and his stepdad passed away. And these are people that I grew up with, they're like my family. And I think about us, playing Dungeons and Dragons and video games and exploring, going to parties and clubs and all this stuff, because we were friends for many, many, many years, and we're still friends, right? And I think about those days like it was yesterday, and then I go back, oh no, it was 30 years ago. It was 30 years ago where I went on a vacation with you and your stepdad and your mom to Vegas, and now they're dead. They're both dead, a long time ago. And I think about, girls and women that I dated and that I cared about. And, when you part ways with people, whether it's friends or, girlfriends or any of that, right? In the back of my mind, at least, because I think about it as yesterday, I might run into them again, but then at my age, I think I started to have the realization that no, I'll never see him ever again. You know what I mean? I'll never see that person. These people that I grew up with, I will never see because they're dead, or my life won't cross paths anymore. It's in a way, that's why it hurts so much for Jeb to lose Eliza, because there was a hope that she was still there somewhere, that somewhere she was going to come to Rome, and he was going to find the girl he always loved, and he was the king of the king of Rome, right? The king of the Rome Social Club, and he was going to woo her away from her husband and win. And I think that was probably his fantasy for years, decades maybe. And then he meets the husband, and he's kind of a chump, right? He meets the husband, and he's kind of a chump. And he finds out that she did love him the whole time. And he was too busy being a party animal, he probably should have gone after her. Like he should have gone after the novel.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that he doesn't regret. Like there's a lot that he accepts as being part of his life. I think that her loss is the big regret. Yeah, for sure. Because there's a lot of reflections on his childhood when he looks up at his ceiling and it turns to the ocean, and then he goes back in time, and that losing her, like that's the inciting incident, and it's what paves the way for like the rest of the movie.
Right, because he realizes that it's over. Like he's never gonna see her again, ever. And
he doesn't even get to read the diary.
Right, he didn't even get to read the diary. Yeah, we forgot to mention that scene where he goes back again to her husband's, and her husband's like, "No, I burnt the diary," and then her husband has a new girlfriend, and he's happy. He's like, "Yeah, he goes, "What are you guys doing tonight?" And her husband's like, he's like, "Oh yeah, me and Paulina over here, we're going to, drink some wine and watch television and go to bed." And he's like, "Of course you will. I love you guys." And he like leaves. And it's like he actually has a very kind of a pathetic line. He's like, while you guys are watching movies, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna go to the party, and I'm gonna drink maybe 7 drinks, enough to get drunk, but not to really affect me. And then around the time you guys will be waking up tomorrow morning, I'm gonna go home and get into bed. And it's kind of a pathetic line. It sounds cool to like a teenager, but coming from a 65-year-old man, you're like, "Ew, that's kind of grody," right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And he's not saying it to like pimp himself out. He's saying it like kind of sad in a way.
Yeah, matter of fact, I almost wonder if Eliza dying was doing him a huge favor, because it's this great love that he had, and he wrote this great book about it, but then he spent 40 years trying to do whatever it is that he was doing. And when she dies, he's set free to then change in such a way and probably see something more real than this waking dream he's been in for the past 40 years. I don't know.
Did I miss in the movie, did they actually say what his book was about? There's the woman speculating that he must have been in love when he wrote it, but I don't think they actually say like what the book was about or any details about it. I think that's actually really interesting. It's something that like you don't need to be spoon-fed every morsel of information, right? You can just wonder like, what did this guy write? And I think that's totally okay. And I think more I don't know. I think a lot of readers and movie watchers, we've come to expect the spoon feeding, which I think is really fucking annoying. I'm not a fan of it. And so that was really refreshing in this movie that they don't go into like what he wrote. We're allowed to just like imagine what he might have.
Right.
I wonder how many characters in the movie actually read the book. it sounds like it might be one of those books that a lot of people said they read.
Yeah,
because it was
fashionable. It's such a cultural touchstone. It's the best movie in Italy, and blah blah blah, or best book in Italy. And he's like, yeah, whatever.
That's why nobody talks about it, because nobody's actually read it.
Yeah,
right. Except the nun. The nun definitely read it.
The nun
actually read it. Yeah, actually, that's kind of a cool interpretation.
The crazy guy probably did too.
The only
crazy
two
guy probably
read
did
it were
too.
the crazy dude and the nun.
Yeah,
everybody else didn't, but those two did, which I think that would actually say a lot about the quality of the book.
Yes, Romano read it too.
Yes, the literal holy saint read it.
The saint, the screenplay guy Romano, he definitely read it because they were buddies.
How do you guys feel about him? How do you guys feel about that character?
Like I said earlier, I love him. All his scenes were so funny. He's sad but funny.
Normal dude,
right? He's just a normal guy. He just happens to be friends with Jeb, but he's like one of the most normal people in Jeb's life, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it says a lot of Jeb that's the only guy he wanted to say goodbye to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good. And I think Jeb respects him too, because when he meets the stripper daughter, he's like, her name's Ramona. That's a very bad name. It implies ambition. And he's making fun of his friend a little bit. He's making fun of his friend a little bit, but he also recognizes that, like, he's failing, but at least he is failing. And not.
Right. I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
I caught that line, but I didn't connect Ramona to Romano, right?
And it's the same. Yeah, I'm almost certain that's what he was referencing. Is his friend? It's like it suggests ambition. And I love how the heroin addict looks at him like, "What are you talking about? Shut the fuck up, Jeb."
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like Romano too. And then, I don't think we ever got his girlfriend's name at all. Like,
it's just bitch. It's just bitch.
Yeah, but she's such an interesting looking person though. Like she looks like you know what she looks like? She looks like a human. Well, she looks like a Borzoi dog turned into a human.
Yeah.
Like she's kind of like, she's very elegant, and she has that like very, the Roman nose, and she's the snootiest, most bitchy character in like almost any movie I've ever seen. And she's so like, she's almost like the villain of the whole movie not the villain, but one of the villainous characters, because she represents like but she's also very attractive in a way. Like I find her very attractive.
I think one of the reasons that she's kind of bitchy is that she is one of these like artsy fartsy people who does just like way too much cocaine, and it's a personality type. I don't know. I've met a few of them myself.
I'm not an artist anymore. I'm not an actress anymore. I'm a novelist now, and I'm a
writer now.
Yeah. I'm gonna write a novel like in a very Proustian style, And I will admit, I'm a failed literary guy now, because I've never read Proust. I haven't either. I have the first of the new translation of Proust's 6 novel length work, and I've never read it. I've been meaning to. I feel like it's going to take me a lot of effort to dig into French literature, but that's where the whole Madelines come from, and there's Proust is Proust. There's there's a cool line. Go ahead and fist it, but I'm going to find this line that he talks about.
Yeah, find the line. But I think I realized who that character is. Guys, she's Substack.
Oh yeah, she is.
Yeah,
Substack.
pretty much.
Yeah, she's just that. She's that writer. She's that writer, and who's ultimately a bitch.
Right.
Or as we might say in these parts, a retard. No, I'm kidding. But anyway.
Where's the line where he talks about writing nothing? What was it? Oh no! So Jeb goes to Roman. He goes, "Are you going out with that gloomy girl you're always with? I wish. I've tried it on 7,000 times. I've never even gotten a kiss, not one." And he goes, "She's a bitch." Romano goes, "No, she's not. She's complicated. No, she's a bitch. Trust me. You're too kind. I can't tell her type from a mile off. I don't even need to meet them." But that's like in his bedroom.
Yeah.
Where is that line about the book? What he talks about? He talks about writing nothing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me see.
I
don't think it's in this.
Towards the end of the movie.
Looking for the thing.
Yeah, it was towards the end of the movie. Do you have the screenplay open?
Yeah, but I can't find it. I have like a thing of quotes.
Just yeah, it's a book, writing a book about nothing. It's kind of like a quote, kind of like
he's referring to Flaubert, and he's another French writer. He's referring to Flaubert, and he's talking about how like Flaubert tried to write a book about nothing, and he's telling his maid that like his entire life is nothing. You know, like he's got nothing to write about because he's nothing. Of course, he's wrong, right? Because you know, he does have something to write about, but it took the nun to get that. You know what line I really liked actually? There's a small scene where he's having soup with the dwarf with his publisher, and Dundina goes, "How's the soup, little Jep?" And he goes, "The soup's good." "Why did you call me little Jep? No one's called me that for centuries." And she goes, "Because a friend every now and again needs to make their friend feel like they did as a child." And I'm like, I like that. I like that a lot.
It's a good line.
All right, guys. I think we've gone on about 2.5 hours. So we've covered the whole movie. If you're listening, we've had like about, kind of fluctuating between 10 or so live listeners. This was a live experiment. I like doing it. We might just start doing it live every time. And then this episode will be edited and, the sound cleaned up, and it will be put out as a regular Black Ibis Social Club episode. I don't know if anybody's still on right now. If anybody has any questions, hop in the chat. And
wave in the chat,
right? But eventually we'll probably have a lot more listeners joining us as we work out the kinks of this. I think it's kind of cool to do it live, and for all you guys that hopped on to listen, thank you very much, Lauren, Judy. You guys are all awesome. If you're still listening, you're Judy's. Fisto Judy Ann says that your laugh is my absolute favorite, and I like her idea. Let's do a group trip to Italy. We'll go walk around Rome. We'll be flaneurs and
the Black Ibis Debauchery Tour 2026.
Yeah, but it's gonna be. You like it live, Lauren? I like that
live everything.
Yeah, I think we'll do it. I mean, I'll actually like. So this is the first time I'm using StreamYard. Usually we use Zoom, and Zoom is not meant for this, right? StreamYard is actually meant for recording podcasts. So I think I'm gonna use StreamYard every time, even for the not live podcast, because it has a not live mode in it. And I like, obviously you guys that are listening, you guys can't see our screen, but it allows me to do a lot of moving around and stuff, and it allows people to change icons and do all this stuff. So it's actually kind of a cool setup, and I really like it. So it's like meant for what we're doing, and I think it's worth the switch. It was kind of fortuitous because my Zoom account was coming to an end, so I'm like, let me try a trial of this new thing, and it works really well. The sound quality seems to be really good, and it seems to be very a good program that's actually intended to, because Zoom is intended for meetings at work, and we're using it as like a hack, but this is meant to do this. And we tried the other one. Remember, we tried the other one that one time, and I hated the editing it did. What I like about this one is that once you're done doing the stream, you download it, and it becomes an actual file in the same way Zoom does. And I can actually edit the file, so I can upload it to Substack and get it out to everybody, get it out to Spotify, YouTube, and stuff. So it's one of those things where we can do the live show, and then we can also do it, as an actual podcast for listening later. So it's kind of a cool best of both worlds. And I can do this if you're watching on YouTube. I can do this and add stuff, and do all kinds of presentations on it. I can show my screen, and we can do it allows for more interactive stuff, which I'll probably implement later on in the life cycle of this great experience of podcasting. But once again, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. Lisa, thank you for joining. You're always welcome. You're my favorite, Substacker, right?
Thank you.
Like you don't Substack enough, right?
The best.
But you're Yeah, you're one of, I want you on like every single time, because I know, especially when it comes to movies, like I'm like, you know what, definitely Lisa is coming on this one, because I know she's gonna, so we'll do more movie episodes.
All right.
So for listeners, this movie episode is actually going to be a free episode. It's kind of taken the place of our regular weekly episode, interview kind of episodes. But in the future, if you look at the icon I set up for it, it matches the Black Ibis Film Club, not so much the regular show. This is kind of a freebie from the future when we do movie episodes where we do this kind of stuff, where we break down a movie into all its baseline elements. There are going to be behind the paywall, right? What I'm thinking of doing is this live stream for movie episodes where everybody can join, and that will be obviously free for everybody to join. But once we actually put out the episode, it will be behind the paywall. So I think that's kind of a fair compromise. But like I've always said, our weekly episodes, like the one next week and the one before, it's going to always be the free Substack ones. Next week we have a guest. It's going to be kind of we're going to do it on a different day. So I'm not even sure if we're going to stream live that one. We'll see. We'll talk about it because our scheduling was kind of weird. We had to reschedule because of me, and our guest's schedule did not match our schedule. So we kind of are going out. The following week, we're going to have a friend of the pod. We're going to talk about his book. We're going to have Jack from the Book Club from Hell, and we're going to. I was a guest on his podcast, and so he's coming back to us, and we're going to talk about his book, The Tower, in 2 weeks.
Ooh,
so that's going to be fun. He's got a cool book. I really liked it. I read it. And then we're pretty much open after that. So I'm going to have to do some scheduling for the rest of the summer. Last night, I actually recorded the podcast. I was a guest on, I don't know if I want to say it out loud. Either way, I was a guest on a podcast, and it hasn't been announced yet, but we talked about one of my favorite novels, The Magus by John Fowles, and it's a great book. It's up there with in my top 5 books. If you look through old episodes, there's an episode I did where I talked about some of my favorite books, and The Magus was one of them. It's another kind of journey, kind of a finding yourself and being shocked by circumstances and being shocked into a different life. So that's going to be a good listening. Once he shares that and he announces it officially, I'll share it with everybody so you can go listen to his podcast. I'll just give you a hint. It was a previous guest of ours, and he's a much cooler podcaster than we are, to be honest. He's been around for a lot longer. And then if you've noticed that, people in our circle are starting to get noticed. The Rolling Stone magazine did they did a magazine article on the anti-woke literary scene, and they mentioned the Nutcracker.
Nutcracker, isn't it called Nutcracker? I've seen that book around for a while, but I've never picked it up.
So he's the author of that one. He's often comments on all our episodes, and he's always sharing our stuff, and he's been around, and he's cool. So
Baltic, right? Dan Baltic.
Yeah, Mr. Baltic himself.
Yeah, he's a funny dude. I like him. He's funny.
I did talk to him a while back about coming on, and we just never got around to it because I never got a chance to really read the book. Unfortunately, I've been basically Jeb Gambarella, like when it comes to reading novels this year. I've just been like, I look at my Goodreads, like books I've read. And,
oh my God, me too. It's just like, I have the goal. I shrank my goal number from what it was last year, and I'm still not meeting it.
No, me too. My average novel, like I read about, if you look at my past ones, I've read about 50 to 60. Sometimes I hit 80 books a year, and I'm talking about novels, and nonfiction. Also, this year I think I've read like 2. And I dropped down my goal to 25, which is like half of what I read last year, and I'm still like not even close to like reading it. And it's like I was looking on my Kindle, and I have like little files of like fiction to read, nonfiction to read, and I'm like, there's like freaking 60 novels sitting in my queue, basically, on my Kindle, and I'm just like, I'm so behind on reading. I've been so busy with life and work and family issues and that kind of stuff. So I just have not, and I've been so tired coming home from work, and really my main creative outlet has been this podcast, and I've been enjoying doing this so much, and it's been really giving me like, and yesterday when I was recording the episode with, I'm not going to say who it is once again, but when I was recording the episode, I meant to prepare, right? I meant to prepare, and I was just completely unprepared. Like I didn't have notes like I do today. Today I had a bunch of notes, and I was just like, I even told them before, I was like, hey man, I don't know. I'm going to be ass on it. And you know what happened? As soon as we started, it went so well. And it was such a good episode, such a good discussion. And I realized that I'm not doing this podcast for you guys, and I'm not doing it to make money, and I'm doing it because I love talking about books and movies,
Yeah.
and I love talking to you guys, I love having these conversations, and I would do this. It's almost like us talking is not a pretext to make a podcast and make money. The podcast episode, the podcast element of it is actually a pretext for us to have the conversation. It's almost gives me an excuse, because I would not get together with Fisto and with Lisa to have a conversation about a movie, but that's what I want to do. I want to talk to people about a movie, and because I love this movie, and I love books, and I love art, and I think that there's important stuff, and I think that we are doing something somewhat important. I mean, some of you guys have listened to Black Ibis and have gone to church because of it, because things we've talked about. And some of you guys have read novels that I think are great. And hopefully we'll watch The Great Beauty if you've never seen it, and thought about things that you've never thought about. And that really is something that does matter a lot in the world. It's like we're making a parallel culture to the mainstream culture, because the mainstream culture sucks, in a way. Fisto, you know who you are by being a podcaster?
Who am I?
You're like Stefano holding the candelabra, taking us to the museum.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
I'm a trustworthy man. I'm a trustworthy
man, right? That's exactly what we're aiming to be here, right? We're trying to have the keys to a culture that sadly is dying, right? We need to hold on to this kind of culture that has value, and not let it be replaced by the plastic surgery of modernity. So by talking about these books, talking about great movies, new and old, because there's good new stuff there too, we're doing something good. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for being on. And
thanks for having me.
Real pleasure. Pleasure as always.
Always, man. And for you guys, like, share, and subscribe. Do me a favor, if you're watching this live, or you're going to watch it, listen to it on Substack or Spotify, please hit share. If you got social media like Facebook or something like that, give us a share. That way other people are listening, because it's a lot more fun with a lot more people, right? We need to have that party. We need to have the conga line train, but I want our train to go somewhere. Right. Right. And just
careful what you wish for, but it will go somewhere.
Just don't be a bitch, right?
Yeah. I was just trying to think, like, what character would I be? Okay. So if you're Jep, and Fisto is the guy with the keys, I'm like, what fucking character? I'm like, I'm definitely just the bitch with the big nose who's pretending to be a novelist. That's except I actually have Play-Doh books. Oh, and shilling my books.
You're a badass.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not super tall. I'm not super short. I'm just average, I guess.
Yeah, well,
because I could be the midget. Sure, why not?
Yeah, because she's weird because she's a midget, and you're weird because you're Canadian. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's Canadian and a dwarf, same.
Fucking whatever. With their flappy heads, right? Like just
the halfling people of the north. That's what Lisa is.
Maybe you're the giraffe. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I wish I was Jep. I mean, I guess not. Well, maybe I just wish I lived his life.
There were certain scenes. I think I've already said this, but like there were certain scenes and certain lines that I'm like, yeah, no wonder Alexandria loves this movie. Like, no surprise there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, guys. Good night. I'm going to end it. We'll see you guys next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.